Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. Welcome. I hope that you are well. Um, Let me just finish setting up here. I apologize for my delay as always. If someone could let me know in the chat, a Cooper Glover, hello. It's nice to see you. Thank you so much for that message, by the way, my friend, about spreading the word about this. I'm always so appreciative of that. Really, I am. Thank you. I wouldn't be able to do this channel at all without you and others. So, is the sound okay? Is it coming through? We'll begin momentarily as well. Zyrother's here as well. Hello. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for confirming the sound, Cooper Glover. Okay. We will be starting momentarily with regard to the discussion on the film, which is Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Okay, great. So the sound is okay. Thank you very much, Secondhand Sounds, for checking that. Island 007100, hello. It's nice to see you. Thank you so much for checking out the sound. Thank you. Is the image coming through okay? Let's see. How many fingers am I holding up? That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a Star Trek 3 joke. Sorry. Okay. We'll be talking about that and others momentarily. Thank you, Secondhand Sounds. Thank you. Okay. All right, just sit back and I know it's 7:01 here, but let's give it another minute or so to begin. Once again, the topic for discussion is Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Okay. Thank you so much as always for stopping by and checking out the channel. As always, I appreciate it very much, my friends. I hope my discussion does not disappoint. I have a tendency to do that, but I hope it doesn't. I will do my best to avoid that where possible. Okay. We go in here and great. Okay, wonderful. Oh, I was there already. What did I do? Okay. Great. So let's see who's in the chat. Who is Zyrother says, after this rewatch, I am now conflicted whether this or one is my favorite. Forgot how much I love this film. Timothy is here. Hello. Scott. Hello, Scott. It's nice to see you again, my friend. That's not yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's the joke. Yes, that's from that film. Yes. Analysis of sci-fi. It's nice to see you again as well. Thank you. Secondhand sounds. The weather, yes, thanks for asking. The weather in Japan right now, at least in Tokyo, it's rainy and cold and wet outside. Yes. Erwin is here. Hello, I got your message. I read your comment about the Star Trek 3 and you plan to join. Thank you so much. Thank you, my friend. Let's see here. Island 007100, our dear friend says, I would pick this film as having the best poster art of the series. Always loved this image. Oh yes, Spock. The image of Spock and the kind of, yeah, and the people. Yeah, these posters are just great. Analysis of analysis of sci-fi. I already I've mentioned you before. The chat is jumping here on me. I apologize. Optimus got slimed is here. Hello. Okay. Matt Flaherty is here. Hello. Scott says, Spock, which way did he go? Search for Spock. Yes. He went that way. What that way? Oh, it's right there around the corner, sitting on that chair, which is on the back, it says director's chair. He's It's right there. Christian's Hobby Blog. Hello, it's nice to see you. Thank you. All right, let us begin. Seth Walsh is here. Hello. All right, I'll talk to you later, Seth. Thank you. And let's see. Okay, home videos. Hello. We found Spock yet. We'll try to find Spock. Maybe he's around here somewhere. Yes, search for Spock. Okay. So let us now begin. Okay, so shall we start? Okay. Thank you so much for joining, and greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke Beppu, Daisuke, and thank you once again for joining over the course of these weeks. Today, well, over the course of these weeks, it is our plan to speak about the films in the Star Trek universe, at least the first 6, and our trajectory has us traversing many courses, as we know, and today that trajectory brings us to this film, 1984. Yes, 1984, and this is a film which is called Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. So we will talk about this and aspects of this and share our feelings and perspectives and opinions and views about this work and what it means to us in terms of our own cinema journey. So that's the plan, anyway. And I look forward, as always, to hearing your thoughts. So please share with me. Feel free, if you're comfortable, of course, to share with me, share with us how you feel about this work. I'm always happy to hear from you. And in that spirit, let us hopefully have a nice conversation over the course of, say, the next 2 hours or so. Excuse me. Before we begin in earnest, let us first talk about some preliminaries, which is this is a casual conversation. This is not in any way meant to be a comprehensive overview or academic take or in-depth review of the film Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. So on the contrary, it's simply for me my hope to have a very nice conversation. I therefore do not at all hold myself out to be any kind of expert when it comes to, say, the world of Star Trek, the details and intricacies when it comes to this particular world and the ins and outs and the facets and the technological aspects and the scientific aspects and the lore and the canon. It's stuff that I have a lot of difficulty retaining. And there are many points, too, that I am incapable of understanding fully because of my own shallow levels of comprehension. So this is a journey where I will make, and I have made, a number of, say, missteps or errors along the way. But that's just part of what this is, which is a casual conversation. So I have approached this film as I have with other films in terms of my own childhood, and I will try to share a little bit of that with you later today. But that means, therefore, that I won't be able to answer every single question about this film. I don't know everything there is about this film, but I will be sharing my perspectives, as I say, from the vantage point of my having seen the film so many times, a number of times. I've seen this film, again, like many others. I have seen this film so many times. I don't know. I can't count because it's that long. It's been so many years. So that is my place that I'm coming from regarding this film. And so if you have any specific questions, I might not be able to answer, but there are always so many great people who are kind enough to join in and be in the chat, the live chat, for example. So I'm sure that you might be able to find answers from these well informed and highly capable and intelligent experts and film lovers. So I hope you find all your answers. And speaking of the live chat too, the live chat is open, and so please feel free to use the live chat, and I will do my best to talk to you through that. If I miss your name, if I skip over your name or your comment, I apologize. Really, I apologize. No ill will meant on my part. Please believe me. But if you, if right, I don't mean to skip over anyone, but it just happens sometimes by accident on my side, or just in the interest of time, because I am rather limited today in terms of time. I do have to leave. If it hits 9:30 on my clock, I must begin to wind down. So I am limited for time. So if I do skip over your comment or name, I do apologize very much. I am very, very sorry. But also, please, there are so many lovely people here and who are friends of this channel, supporters, and so thoughtful and considerate, and so much more capable than I. So please feel free to have conversations in the chat, and I really hope that you enjoy yourself and have a good time. And also, of course, as we all know, right, we will not always agree on everything, and that is okay. So wherever there might be some disagreement, or maybe something of the kind or something similar in the chat, I always know that I can rely on you, on all of you, to always maintain a sense of mutual respect and listening and helping out where we can. And so this is meant to be a good time. It's just meant to be fun. And so I know that you will continue to treat everyone with a sense of mutual respect, because you have always done so. You have always shown me so much kindness, and I'm always relying on you, and I'm grateful for you for all of that. And so thank you so much for that in advance. And I know that I can always rely on you, my dear friends, to look out for me and look out for this channel, look out for everyone here when we are talking about this and other films. So thank you very much in advance, as always. Last and certainly not least, of course, we will be definitely talking about specifics when it comes to this film, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. So if you have not seen the film yet, then I strongly encourage you to turn off this video, or turn off this live stream, and watch the film at your own pace. And then when you have seen the film, and if you're still interested, you can always come back to this channel. This live stream should be uploaded. It always does so automatically after I push the off button. It automatically uploads, YouTube does, it automatically uploads the live stream as a video, which can be rewatchable on this channel. So, excuse me. I'm sorry, pardon me for one second. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse me, pardon me for that interruption. So in that spirit, yes, I'd like to say that, what was I saying? Yes, so if you have not seen the film, please, I strongly encourage that you watch the film first, and then you can always come back at any time if you are interested, and we can talk about this film, which is Star Trek III, The Search for Spock from 1984. So let us start the conversation. And then before I do, let me now stop by the live chat, and then we can begin. Let's see. Erwin says, I watched it last night for the first time, and it was very good. Thus, for me, goes the theory that only the even films are good. Cooper Glover says, Daisuke, the film I don't think really matched up to Star Trek II. I find this film kind of lame, sort of entertaining, though. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. And let's see. Mike Eli is here. Hello, it's nice to see you. Jerome Weaselberry is here. Hello, it's nice to see you, as always. One of the best channels out there. Analysis of Sci-Fi says 1984, same years, has Ghostbusters. Yes, it stars the big performers. Christopher Lloyd, yes, Ghostbusters. Also, I think Gremlins as well, right? If I'm not mistaken. So I don't remember it so clearly like I do others, but I do, or I can say that yes, it's my understanding that I saw Gremlins in the theater when it was released. I also saw Ghostbusters in the theater when it was released, and um, and also yes, Star Trek Three: The Search for Spock when it was released. Scott C is here. Hello, it's nice to see you. Thanks to you, I always have a Towering Inferno back of my mind. Very, very nice reference, by the way, Scott C. Thank you so much. Nax, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 0. Hello. It's nice to see you. Fuzz Aldrin is here. Hello. Chiggers is here. Hello. Yes. 5 bags of popcorn is here. Obi Sanders is here. Yes. Oh, Scott C. Yes, it's his revenge for all the arguments he's lost. Yes. You're suffering from Vulcan mind meld, Doctor. Yes. That's right. Okay. Scott Hansen says Christopher Lloyd chewing up the scenery. Devon is here. Hello, it's nice to see you. Bartholomew is here as well. It's nice to see you. Buck Bell is here. Gosh, it's nice to see all of you as always. Wow. Wow, it's wonderful. Wonderful. Let's see. Okay. Obi's talking about Savick. Yes, yes, we'll talk about Savick. Robin Curtis and Paul Abbott is here. Hello. Great, great. Okay, so I will return to the live chat later in the video, or later in the discussion, but now let us turn to the film in earnest, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Okay, now 1984, this is released in, I think, the summer of that year, if I'm not mistaken, based on points that I've seen, say, online elsewhere. Now, I've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. I was born in 79, so in 1984, that would have, I would have been 5 years old. This is where I'm beginning to have memories of going to the movie theater, and early, early memories of going to the movie theater. Now, I've mentioned, say, with Gremlins, and I seem to recall going to the movie theater and the like, but now, many, many years after the fact, those memories are hazy. The same is true for a film like, say, Return of the Jedi. I know I went to see it in the theater, I think, but the memories are hazy. With Star Trek 3, 1984, this is a film where I can still remember those memories. I remember this. It was my mom and I. She took me to this theater. It was nearby, and I don't remember the name of the theater. It wasn't one of these big multiplexes. I don't think those were around yet, but it was still a very big theater at the time. I thought it was big. It was a kind of a mainstream theater, and we went to the movie, and we arrived late. And so we arrived at the point, it wasn't so late, but it already had the Paramount logo, I think, or had already gone through, and it started with the the um, the recap in the small, and it slowly grows, and it's black and white or sepia toned, and then slowly turns into color. But a recap of the highlights reel of the final act, the final moments of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And so it was in that moment between Kirk and Spock. And there's that moment that we walked in. So it was so whenever I see the film now and I watch the opening part, I'm reminded of how, yes, we arrived late in the theater at the time. And then from then, the film progressed. And then after that, I would watch the film so many times, so many times on VHS tape. It would be something that would be a type of regular rental. When you go to when you went to the rental store, you spent so many hours, or not hours, but it felt like hours, I suppose, just trying to fit. You could only choose, say, one or two, and you had to pick. It was so difficult. So sometimes it would be just maybe picking one film that was new, and then picking another film that would be a film that was like an old friend. And Star Trek 3 was one of those. I think it would be a regular rental. So, so in that way, this is my this is in many ways, it could be said to be my introduction into the world, direct introduction into the world of Star Trek, in terms of the longevity of memory and where I am now and how I look back. And also, it could be said too that this film, Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock, for me, is not only a film that's important in terms of my own entry into the world of Star Trek directly, as it was happening for me in real time, but also it could be said to be a film that figures in very, very strongly regarding my movie theater going experiences, at least as far as I remember them. So, this is therefore a film that I hold in very, very high regard already, and because of those 2 points alone. Now, when we talk about the film itself, and when we talk about the twists and turns of the film, when we talk about the characters, and we will talk about the characters, we see so much action, even where there might be the absence of some characters, in particular, of course, the quote unquote absence of the character of Spock, although we do know that Spock does make appearances in a from a certain point of view anyway. Although we have all these things, and because perhaps we have all these things, so this film, in terms of its details, its plot, its characterizations, and its way of handling the story, set piece to set piece, sequence to sequence, and all the elements that pertain thereto. This also is grounds for me, reasons for me to hold this film in such high regard. So it's the memories that I have associated with watching this film, as well as the film itself. This film is, simply put, splendid. Absolutely splendid. I think this is one of the best. I think it is fun, it is shocking, it's tragic, it's heavy. My goodness, is it heavy? And or I should have said that in I should have said that I should oh gosh, why I spoiled that. Oh my goodness, let me rewind. Oh, it's heavy. Or I should say oh great Scott. Yeah, this is heavy. That's a Back to the Future 3 reference. Okay. Well, there might be some other Back to the Future references as well. I saw Back to the Future in the theater as well. 1, 2, and 3. And so, yes, 1.21 gigawatts. We'll talk about, yes, Christopher Lloyd later. But what was I saying? So this is a film that I hold in such high regard. I think it is wonderful. I think it has so much heart and soul. I, of course, over the years, then later caught on to the whole thing about 1, 3, and 5, 2, 4, and 6. And as I mentioned, I think on past live stream discussions, I was shocked when I first heard that perspective on the Siskel and Ebert review show where they were talking about Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. And I just remember it was Ebert, right? Roger Ebert, who said, yeah, 1, 3, 5 were bad, 2, 4, and 6 were good, or something. So I was shocked because he included 3 in the bad bunch. That was shocking to me because I thought, and I still do think, Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock is top tier. This is among the best, among the very best. There are some there are some things along the way that we can, of course, question and of course wonder about and kind of criticize. Even there are some things too, and I will maybe mention those. Some plot points too that I don't. I'll be honest, I don't fully comprehend either, and that might be due to the film. It might be due to me. Who knows? But let's try to point those out as well. But in that conversation, I also want to applaud its depth of scope, its use of the decor and scenery, its reliance, faithful and lovingly so, on certain aspects of the series, certain characters that we see return, certain worlds and civilizations and cultures that we see portrayed, not least of which being, of course, Vulcan. And we see now expansions and now new things and other things that we might have hinted at or might have been felt in the series, but now we see other aspects. The return of Sarek, who'd seen maybe in very memorable appearances, both in the original series and also in the animated series as well. If you know one of the best episodes in that series, which is called Yesteryear, and then of course the original series, Journey to Babel. But and then we have other aspects of the planet, and then also which we saw a little bit of course, in the motion picture. Now we see other aspects there too, and of all people, who's going to be? You're going to climb the steps of Mount Solea, and who are you going to find at the top there? None other than Judith Anderson, Mrs. Danvers. Wow, but we'll talk about that later too. And then also we have the Klingons. We have the whole aspect of the Klingons and the Klingon culture. Now, this is again a big deal. We had seen, of course, Klingons in the original series and the like, but we had never seen or never heard the language in this way until we got, for instance, that first glimpse in Star Trek the Motion Picture, which also, for those of you who know, also has the actor Mark Leonard appear. So Mark Leonard appeared there as a Klingon, and now he appears here as a Vulcan. But he appeared a little bit there in that early sequence in the motion picture. We got a little bit too of the language there as well, and the ships and the interiors and the look and feel. But at that time, of course, it was the Klingon battle cruisers that were trying to confront or trying to get out of the V'ger situation there. Here we have more stuff, more language, more of the culture, more of the ethos when it comes to combat, when it comes to battle situations, when it comes to process and strategy, as well as takes on confrontations and death, and also the language and the look and the ships too. We have the what I understand is the first appearance of the design of the Klingon bird of prey. So it's the first time I think we're seeing it in the Star Trek universe. Although Sulu, when he's on the bridge of the Enterprise, he seems to know immediately what it is when it decloaks, and he just shouts, "Klingon bird of prey, sir! They're arming torpedoes. Fire, Mr. Scott. Good shooting, Mr. Scott." Yes. So we'll get to that scene later as well. So for those reasons, those are just examples of where this film, I think, excels. Not to mention, too, the Federation side. We see for the first time the Great Experiment, the Excelsior. We see this space dock. We see more aspects of the Federation, and also we get a sense of the fact that there could be problems and political issues and the like that could be part of this universe. Where Genesis is now, when they return home, they find out from that Genesis is now indeed this type of what's described as being a galactic controversy. This type of stuff is further expanding and further touching upon and elaborating upon certain details that were already there or that were hinted at earlier, but now we see them progress in certain directions as well. And then, of course, we have the great story, the great each of the characters gets a moment to shine from a certain point of view. And so we have the group coming together, and including the Enterprise herself, coming together for this mission to save their friend or their friends. And we see the relationship where we get a sense of how much Spock and the memory of Spock means to Kirk, and not just to Kirk, but to the rest of the crew. They would be doing, they are willing to do all this for their friend. Indeed, as we'll mention too, why are you doing this? Because the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. And so this is a reversal on that wonderful phrase that we saw from Star Trek 2. And then in that, we have the further elaboration upon or reference to or a confirmation of the strong bond between Kirk and Spock, Kirk and McCoy, and also Spock and McCoy. This relationship between Spock and McCoy has always been a type of playfully antagonistic one, from the series and then into the motion picture and then into Star Trek II. The Wrath of Khan. But here I would say that we have, in many ways, perhaps the most touching portrait of that relationship between Spock and McCoy in such an interesting and fascinating way. Um, right? Because he says, right, I never thought I'd hear myself say this, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but I've missed you. And that wonderful exchange between the two of them in the one of the rooms there as they're on their way to Vulcan after leaving from Genesis. That's one of the great scenes in this film and arguably in all of Star Trek. That moment of tenderness between the two of them, and it's McCoy essentially talking to the Katra-less body of Spock, of course, but still, we have that great exchange, and you see the eyes kind of opening, kind of, maybe, I'm not sure, but and later, of course, on Mount Solea, that for Foul Tor Pan, I think I got the pronunciation right. And they say, "Who is the keeper of the Katra?" Right? I am McCoy, Leonard H., son of David. And he says, "I choose it because there's a risk, a great deal of risk to him, but so he has to choose whether or not he will participate." And then he, of course, says, "I choose the danger." Hell of a time to ask. And so this is a great example of the further, say, confirmation or further enlightening on that relationship. So Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. It's all here. It's always been there, and I would say it is expounded upon and touched upon in such beautiful ways. So with that, maybe opening salvo comments from me out of the way, let me now go to the chat and then continue on in earnest. So let us go here. Okay. Sorry if I'm skipping over. Okay. Okay. Analysis of sci-fi. You're lucky for seeing Ghostbusters in the theater. Oh, thank you. Yes, yes. Um, Still gives me chills. Right. I'm not a good one for impersonation of voices, but there's a character in that who's referred to as Zool. And Zool says, "I can do it. Are you a god? No? Then die." Right. I was just thinking about that line just yesterday, in fact, right? Um, when someone asks you if you're a god, what do you say? You say yes. All right. Let's see here. Zyrother says the actress from Wrath of Khan was very unhappy about shooting the film, so she did not want to return. Oh yeah, so this is in reference to the character of Savick, who we know in Wrath of Khan was portrayed so memorably by Kirstie Alley, and here we have Savick portrayed by Robin Curtis. And so this is one of the aspects I do want to touch upon. I think it's a different performance, a different type of performance, definitely, but it's still a really great one and memorable one and really important one in the context of the well, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about Genesis and the relationship with David and the relationship with Spock and Ponfar, and yeah, so we'll talk about that hopefully later. Cooper Glover, 1972 says, the Genesis planet effects where it's starting to break apart looks a little fake, maybe. Yes, maybe looking back on it, that part and maybe some other parts do look a little bit like, I don't, maybe cardboard backdroppy, and if that's an adjective phrase. I would point out, for instance, too, I love the sequence, but when I was a kid, I was so blown away by the bridge of the Excelsior, the USS Excelsior. But now I look back on it and I'm thinking, wow, this is like an open stage or something. And it's certainly a bridge design that was altered for when we see the interior of the U.S. Excelsior in another film in the series. But yes, that was there are some parts where one could say that maybe it's a bit it's a bit maybe it does look a bit kind of sound stagey, that's for sure. But no worries about that. I totally understand that. Totally understand that at all. Totally understand that completely. So let's see here. Um, gosh, what was I doing? Um, Sorry about that. I just lost my place here. What am I doing? I just lost my place. Sorry about this. Just give me 1 second here. Hmm. Okay, great. Sorry about that. I'm now back. Okay. Let's see. And Eric Peeper. Hello, Eric. You say, get out of there. So this is in reference to Krug. Get out! Get out of there! I can't do Christopher Lloyd very well, so let me try it again. Get out! Get out of there! Marty! All right. So, yes. Yes, Neo Blissy XVS. Hello, it's nice to see you. And Pedro E is here as well. Hello, it's nice to see you. Tristan is here. Hello. Great, great. And yes, and you say Neo Blissy X, you continue. You're talking with Zyrother here. And you also say, as far as I'm concerned, Robin Curtis is the true Savick, even though Kirstie Alley originated the role. That's really interesting. Yes. I think she's really great in this. And Raymond is here. Hello, it's nice to see you. Scott C, you also chime in as well. Agreed. Robin Curtis was quite good. You say. Um, Obi, let's see. Admittedly, Star Trek Search for Spock has grown on me over the years. I rewatched it this week and had a great time. Oh, that's really lovely. And Scott Johansson, you continue with that James Horner music in the beginning. Yes, yes, the James Horner music returns triumphantly from its already triumphant beginnings, shall we say, in Star Trek to The Wrath of Khan. But here you have the echo so well, the continuity so nicely, and also adding new themes, the Klingons and the uh, oh gosh. Well, okay, we'll talk about. Okay, so let us now turn to the film itself. So, as Scott was alluding to, of course, it starts out with these wonderful beats of James Horner music, but it also starts out with this prologue, this intriguing prologue, which starts slow and small, almost like a TV screen. It reminds me, or I'm reminded, or I recall later the trailer. Do you remember the trailer for the Star Wars, the special editions? And it started out like, with the TV screen and the attack on the Death Star, and then it just slowly expanded, and so now I saw that trailer, and I thought, oh, this is like Star Trek 3, the opening of Star Trek 3, the search for Spock, etc. But of course, it's used also as a way of re-entering the world, and very slowly, very almost imperceptibly, we get a sense of it returning, coming back to the world. And I love this, and it also gives us that heart wrenching moment in the funeral send off of Kirk saying, right, of my friend, I can only say this, of all the souls I've encountered in my travels, his was the most human. And it turns from that moment, or in that moment, it turns into color. And then it goes into the idea of shooting the torpedo, which is also the coffin of, what is it, Mark 7, I think, on red text on the back, on the outer casing of the torpedo tube shell there. And it shoots out, and we understand it goes into Genesis, the now formed Genesis planet. And so I must admit that I don't know if I spoke about this, but this is something that never, I think about it, never really actually, it didn't make that much sense to me. If someone maybe dies on duty, then I would think that maybe you not have the body. You maybe preserve or keep the body in while you're transit back to return home, and then you would uh, uh, you would then meet the family or have the body then um, taken to the family or close relatives. That's what my understanding might have been. So I don't quite understand. I guess perhaps somewhere in Spock's last wishes or something, maybe he wrote, "Okay, if I die in battle, then please make sure that you have my body encased in a torpedo tube and then shot and shoot me to the nearest planet. That's my dying wish," or something like that. Of course, maybe that's something that he didn't tell his close family, including Sarek, and that's why later when Sarek meets Kirk in Kirk's wonderful apartment, I'd love to live in an apartment like that, by the way. But when he goes there, he says, "Why did you leave him on Genesis? Spock trusted you." And that sort of thing. So maybe, of course, as we know, as he acknowledges much later, Sarek does. He says, "My logic is uncertain where my son is concerned," which is a really profound, deep moment when it comes to the relationship between Sarek and Spock. For those of you who know, was it Journey to Babel or Yesteryear, and of course other very famous episodes that we might see later in, say, the Next Generation. Um, we know that the relationship between Spock and Sarek, father and son, is actually somewhat, it could be said to be somewhat filled with maybe a sense of tension or even discord. So to have a statement like that from Sarek at the very end of the film, I think speaks volumes to how he feels as a Vulcan, how he feels about his son. So, but anyway, what was I saying? Yes, of course. So, for some reason that is still to this day puzzling me, but maybe the reason is Spock says also in his dying wish, and also I also want to be shot out into some nearby planet that happens to be self-generating, and maybe I will be caught in the Genesis wave radiation. So maybe something will happen. But anyway, those were my dying wishes. So that's probably something he wrote up in his log or something. So they read it and said, "Oh, these are his dying wishes. So um, let us now respect those wishes and shoot him out." In a torpedo tube. And then he also probably said there, the postscript, "By the way, this is also something that Harv Bennett also wanted me to do." So in any case, that's the start, but it goes into, therefore, the idea of the torpedo tube landing, a soft landing, as David and Savick will later hypothesize in terms of the flux of the gravitational pull of the newly formed Genesis planet at the time. It probably brought him in, or brought the torpedo in, rather than crash landing and burning up in the atmosphere. It brought it into a soft landing, and so it landed preserved on the planet's surface. And this is what we got at the very end of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And also at the very end of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, we got Space, The Final Frontier, as read by Leonard Nimoy. It ended that film, and it also begins this film. So we get that torpedo tube, we get the Space, The Final Frontier, and then we get the title, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, and the glorious James Horner music, right? And it's almost mystical, and it's epic, and it's mystical, and it reminds us of the beauty and glory of this world, and the cloud sweep, and then going back into space and the space field. And also, I should point out too that I love the return of the Star Trek font. You know, this font here, which is reproduced here. That I love that. You know, that S. You know, I mentioned that as a kid. I mentioned somewhere before, as a kid, I would be there at my desk trying to trace over or replicate by pencil and paper the Star Trek font, never being able to do so. It's so cool, so unique. That was one of the weaknesses, I thought, of the Star Trek II title sequences. I love Star Trek II, don't get me wrong, but that font, that blue font, uh, here we have its a triumphant return like we saw it in the motion picture. And then we have the introduction of the characters, or the cast and crew. And of course, at the very end, another thing, we have Harv Bennett mentioned, we have Ralph Winter mentioned, we have, of course, Christopher Lloyd mentioned, Robin Curtis mentioned, and we also understand we are seeing the return of characters like David as well. And then at the very end, we have directed by Leonard Nimoy. So indeed, Leonard Nimoy is returning, and he is returning in many capacities here. So he is here as director, and also he is, of course, going to be appearing here and there as Spock in various forms, and we'll get to that momentarily as well. I should point out that Leonard Nimoy, right, let's see, Leonard Nimoy, I always get my details wrong. I should have prepared. I apologize. Leonard Nimoy also directed films like Three Men and a Baby, right? So, which I saw in the theater too. I saw Three Men and a Baby in the theater, which was really great. I think I might have mentioned that before. What was that great quote? Oh, I think she did a little doodle or something. Um, right. And whenever I hear the song, um, "Good Night, Sweetheart," well, it's time to go. I always think of Three Men and a Baby. And also, by the way, I saw as well Three Men and a Little Lady in the theater as well. So, but what was I saying? So it's Leonard Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy. So we will see Leonard Nimoy in action as director. I think, all things considered, I think he does a really fine job here. And of course, we will see perhaps those director responsibilities continue on in a future film. But so now we have the opening, and also too we see the idea that this is a really direct continuation in terms of the chronology from the end of Star Trek to The Wrath of Khan. We understand that the Enterprise, the battle damage heavy Enterprise, where systems have been restored, and we understand from the opening monologue from Kirk. However, it's now returning home. But we see also the damage, and we see the certain members of the crew there. Although we also understand that the officers of the training voyage, because Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, that voyage was a training mission. We also understand that many of the officers are now assigned to other ships and other duties, including David and Savick, who are now assigned, we understand later, to be aboard a science vessel to monitor and look on with regard to the newly formed Genesis planet. And we will understand later that they are assigned to the USS Grissom. Now, David, I'm not sure what his status is, because I don't think officially he is a member of Starfleet, or he wasn't at the time. I don't think so. Well, maybe he was, I'm not sure, but maybe he is acting science officer or a type of external expert or something. But in any event, he, along with Savick, are at the USS Grissom with, what's his name, Captain Esteban. Captain Esteban, and that wonderful design, which actually I don't, that's another thing I don't understand too, is, again, for those of you who are Star Trek experts, please, if you can help me, I'd be most appreciative. But I don't understand at all the design of the USS Grissom. I don't understand. I think it looks great. I think it looks cool. But I always thought that those protrusions, what's the word? The nozzle or nacelles, I think, which are these things that protrude out and are like sticks that we saw sticking out, where they seem sticking out of the USS Enterprise, like so, aboard the planes, the two planes, the V-shaped part. And I always thought that they were supposed to be separate from the saucer section because of the fact that they are handling the propulsion outward of the power generated from the warp engines. And so we saw in Star Trek II the very serious issues of radiation. And so I always thought that the reason was there was a practical reason to have those separate from the saucer section, which of course we understand is where the most of the personnel of a starship are located. So in order to protect them from radiation. So in that way, I don't understand the design of the USS Grissom, why those protrusions are on the side of the saucer section of that ship. And also I don't, well, anyway, how do they get to, what's the phrase? How do they get from the saucer section to the bottom part, which I understand would probably be the engineering section? How do they have to go? Is there a place that's a safe route of passage that's through these engines? So I don't get that, but it looks cool. It looks cool, and the great chairs. I think it has the pink upholstery, pink colored upholstery for the captain's chair. This is really nice. I think it's the same tone of pink that is the same as or similar to the tone of pink that is Chekhov's shirt that we see him wearing. So I would have loved to have had a scene. It never happened in the film, but I would have loved to have a scene where Chekhov, with that wonderful shirt, that pink shirt, is on the bridge of the USS Grissom, sitting in the chair, sitting in the captain's chair with the same or similar tone of pink. So pink shirt sitting in a pink upholstered chair. It's just seeing where the blend is, or if there's any join, or it becomes like blended together. So it's like, where's Chekhov's body? That would have been a really cool scene. But in any event, um, gosh, I got lost again. Now what was I talking about? So why was I talking about the USS Grissom and the pink chairs? Why was I talking? Oh yes, so um, so we understand from the opening monologue. We understand from the opening monologue that a lot of the trainees are now stationed to other places. But now we understand too that Kirk is somewhat, not somewhat, quite significantly lost, and he's still conflicted, and he's still very much troubled by these events of Star Trek to the Wrath of Khan, including, according to him, um, the death of Spock is like an open wound. And so he feels like maybe he's left something of himself out there. And then, so we have this opening, and then we see, of course, the return of many of the crew. Scotty and Montgomery Scott and Uhura and Sulu and Chekhov. And also we see, what's his name? I don't think he's named in the film. We also see Foster. Yeah, so are they going to give us a reception when we go home or something like that? Yeah. So, right. So, in any case, so we have that introduction there in the USS Enterprise returning home. And also there's a sense of maybe a damaged Enterprise, a kind of worn out Enterprise. This is also going to be coming into play later when we hear the words of Admiral, I think it's Admiral Morrow. And maybe this is already the introduction of the idea of the ship, the Enterprise, being maybe it's now time to become decommissioned. Maybe the Enterprise is too old, and then therefore this is going to set up a lot that's going to happen later in the film. But we are getting hints of this here in terms of the look of it, and it's almost it's triumphant. Excuse me. Excuse me, pardon me for this. It's almost triumphant, obviously, because it survived its ordeal from part two, but it's also feeling like it is still hurt. It's almost limping home in a way, and maybe that's what Janice Rand is thinking when we see the ship return. She's there in that wonderful space dock, I think it's lounge, and she's there and she stands up and just does that little, that you've done it again sort of look, I think. But anyway, so this is also important too because it'll play into what will happen with the Enterprise later, and in particular the great scene between, well, there are two great scenes, many great scenes, including perhaps the two of the greatest scenes in Star Trek ever, and they're all in this film, and they both involve the USS Enterprise. Wow. But anyway, so we have that, and before I go to the chat, I should say the next scene too is this wonderful ship, which looks like, I don't know, like a termite or something, a termite in space. And it's just like, and you go in and you see there's these like cargo nets or fishing nets or something like that, and these blue and red smoky things room, and then we have this woman who appears from the back, and she has what appears to be a type of, maybe she is a Klingon. And then we also have this tape of some sort, and then she is speaking a language that we will understand later to be Klingon, the Klingon language. And who is she speaking to? It's not clear in space, but then we hear the voice. Again, pardon me, my sincerest apologies in advance for my poor Christopher Lloyd impression, but here it goes. Well done, Valkris. Well done. I can't speak Klingon, but I will do my best. If I make Klingon mistakes, please correct me. For those of you who can speak Klingon, please let me know. And then we have the emergence of this, the Klingon bird of prey. Wow, it's huge, and we get the inside of the bridge, and this huge towering captain's chair, and the dog. I guess we can call it a dog. I guess it's, and we have also here that great exchange, and Valkyris saying, I think you'll find it useful. Or I'm paraphrasing, and then the transmission of the information on the tape, and which is the Genesis project information, top secret information. Now, how she got her hands on the Genesis tape, I'm not sure, but this is something that she is giving to Krug, Commander Krug, who is the Christopher Lloyd character, and Krug gets the information on the tape. It's transmitted, and then she reveals that she knows what's on the tape, and then you see his reaction. So you've seen it. She says yes, and they're talking over the intercom. He says, "Unfortunate, understood, Dreyaj." And then you see almost the tear like in his eyes, and you realize that there might be some hinting at of some kind of deep emotional relationship between the two, Krug and Valkyris. But then we have him return to the chair, and it flies about, and that great James Horner music, na 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 na, so cool. And then, when are we gonna get paid, Valkyrie? Soon, really soon. Just hold on for a minute, guys. You're gonna get paid soon, believe me. All right, and then it goes around, no, 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 and then Bach. Right again, the word in Klingon for fire is Bach. Johann Sebastian Bach, boom, and it just explodes. And then we have, therefore, the plot in action. Everything is in motion. It's going to start now, but we have now the Genesis info in the hands of Krug and the Klingons. And also we get the hint, too, that brilliant hint, that nuanced way of introducing us to the culture here, the battle culture and the perspective on death. I never got this as a kid, but as I grew older watching it, I just was so fascinated by how Valkyris, she admits that she has seen the stuff on the tape, and she understands immediately that in order to preserve honor, whatever that conception specifically of honor might be, in the context of the Klingon culture, at least in the context of how she and Krug seem to be perceiving it, she acknowledges and she is resigned to her fate, that she knows that she will die, and she must die at the hands of the Christopher Lloyd character. And Christopher Lloyd says, you will die with honor. You will be remembered with honor. And that's it. So there is that perspective on death. Now, whether this is true for the entire Klingon culture, or whether this is specific only to Krug and also then by extension Valkyris, again, we will not know until maybe we get later versions or later series episodes of that feature Klingons, of course. But now, therefore, we are getting this stuff. And again, this is new stuff. We have to remember Klingons were only, they were featured, I would say, actually, in quantity, not so many times actually in the original series. And when we did see them, they were speaking not in the Klingon language; they were speaking in English and the like. But now we're getting in the motion picture a little glimpse of it, and now we're getting it really out in the open. And so this is in many ways charting new frontiers of Star Trek mythology, in the expounding of the Klingon culture for us to see and witness. And for many people, obviously, it would be for the first time. So my goodness, this is so important in the world of Star Trek. And then so they're getting a lot of new things that will be part of the Star Trek world going forward. So we have the Klingons, we have this idea of exploration, or hinting at, of some kind of perspective on death and honor, and glory and victory. What's the word? I love that word. Again, it comes up later. Or actually, Valkyris says it in her speech. Success, right? Kapla. She says, "Success, my Lord, and my love." And so I think I can't pronounce it well, but Christopher Lloyd pronounces it later. Kupla. So success, right? So we have that idea expounded upon, and then the ship design, the Klingon bird of prey, etc. Speaking of designs, one other thing too before I go to the chat. After this, we get the return of the Enterprise, the small little thing. It reminds me too of that small, tiny way that the Enterprise looked in the V'ger cloud in the motion picture. Where we have that approach to space dock. It suddenly appears. It didn't appear before in any of the films, but now we see this huge space dock, which is kind of like Regular One in terms of a floating mushroom, a floating steel fungus in space. And so we have the great approach music of James Horner, and then a return home of the Enterprise. And we have da 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 da, and of course the space dock is going to be really important because we see the little thing about the door. This is going to be very important later, so remember this: the door, and you go and the idea of the physics of the thing and the size of the Enterprise versus the scale of this huge space dock and going in, and then we see the great experiment, the Excelsior. I'm supposed to have, I can't do a Sulu, I apologize, but he says, supposed to have transwarp drive. And then what does Scotty say? Again, I'm gonna mess up the line. Aye, and if my grandmother has wheels, she'd be a wagon. Right? And like, what does Kirk say? Young minds, fresh ideas, be tolerant. Da, 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 da. And then right, so it's the idea, and also the James Horner music cues here. One of my favorite, right? Da na 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 da 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 na 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 na. Right, I love it. It's like now the Enterprise is slowly moving into frame, and now it's going to be going to the giant mushroom in space. Da, 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 da. And this is Space Dock and the Excelsior and stuff. So we'll see all of this coming back. And then Rand, of course, in the lounge. And then here, too, we have the, in all this majesty and all the return, we have the final detail. There's one crew member that we haven't seen thus far. That's McCoy. And we'll see him momentarily because we suddenly get news that Spock's quarters has been broken into. There is a life form inside Spock's quarters. You know, I thought I ordered Spock's quarters sealed off. Right, yes, I did it myself, Captain, or Admiral. I did it myself, Admiral, says Chekhov. Nevertheless, I'm reading a life form in there. What's going on? Da, 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 da. And we get those wonderful security guard uniforms with those helmet shapes. It's great. And go in. And we get the scene in this mysterious, dark lit room, Spock's quarters. We hear this voice. It sounds like Spock, but it's something. Jim, help me. And then we get Bones in this obviously agitated state. And those eyes, the DeForest Kelly eyes there, how he's able to open his eyes like that. Oh, wow, wow. And so it's like, help me, Jim. Take me home. We are home. We are home. It's not too late. Climb the steps, Jim. Climb the steps of Mount Saleya. Mount Saleya? Mount Saleya. It's on Vulcan. Remember. So here we have the beginnings of this haunting, or hinting at, of the haunting relationship between Spock and McCoy. The memory of Spock and McCoy, which we will understand later, is due to the Katra that is within him. But yes, here, and this is something that is so remarkable, and it never dawned on me, perhaps growing up as a kid watching this, but the similarities in voice and the maybe physical visage, maybe between DeForest Kelly and Leonard Nimoy, maybe they aren't there really, but in this film, for whatever reason, the similarities are striking. The voice, it just feels like and the way that somehow the light shining off, how their faces are lit, there is a similarity in look and sound between Spock and McCoy that I think is played upon so perfectly. And and we already get a sense of this in terms of the voice, in terms of the way that he is shot in black, in the darkness, and his face is in shadow. And then great. Great stuff. So anyway, that is the beginning there. But before we continue on, let us now go to the the live chat here. Zyrother says, I think Shatner gives a very soft but strong performance. I agree. This is a great performance by William Shatner. And I will go into other moments later too, but I also would contend too that um, William Shatner's performance is so brilliant in so many ways. And what I'm about to say, I mean with such affection and such respect. But also, I would say too that for me too, this is perhaps the most, how should I put it? This is the most Michael Myers looking Shatner that I think I've seen. Now, as those of you who know the film, the John Carpenter film Halloween, might recall, the mask that's used in Halloween, as legend would have it, is based upon a Captain Kirk mask. So it's essentially William Shatner's face. That's the basis for the mask that's used by Michael, the character called Michael Myers in this film called Halloween. And so there is a resemblance in when you look, there's certain scenes in that film Halloween that like, wow, that looks like that William Shatner or Captain Kirk. And so when you get to say the films, there are some moments in the motion picture where William Shatner looks Michael Myers-y. Star Trek 2, maybe the same thing, but actually, excuse me, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock is for me where where William Shatner, Admiral Kirk, looks the most Michael Myers-y. There's one shot in particular where it's like, wow, this is like that scene in Halloween where you see Michael Myers and the phone. That's it. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. Yes. Um, yes. Uh, Cooper Glover says the guy who plays Bob Morton in RoboCop is on the crew of the Excelsior, who's shown when the Enterprise is breaking out space dock. I think his name is Miguel Ferrer. Yes, that's right. That's right. Um, Tractor beam. I. Yes. Yes. So, gosh. Don't get me started on what's his name, the captain of the Excelsior, Styles. Is that right, Captain Styles? Don't get me started on him as well. But yeah, that what is it? Gosh, um, gosh, what was I going to say about the captain? Yes, the captain of the Excelsior. There's that scene where he's like da 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 da. He's like filing his nails in his quarters, and he's going like that. And he's like a bit of his nail fell off, and he's looking. He's almost like he's looking for where did that my bit of my nail? Where is it? You know, where's it? Ah, oh, Captain Styles. Oh, anyway, yes, yes. So that's right. And one of my favorite lines. Speaking of Miguel Ferrer, he also portrays a very memorable character named Albert in a separate series which is called Twin Peaks. And I don't want to get into too much about Twin Peaks. So one of my favorite lines in Twin Peaks ever is when Albert says, "I love you, Sheriff Truman." Yes. So this is shall we talk about Twin Peaks in a live chat one of these days? I don't know if possible, But anyway, yes, you're absolutely right. He has a great line here too. Yes, tractor beam, I. And actually, in the VHS tape, it wasn't widescreen. It was what's the phrase, cropped version. And so that when Captain Styles is saying on the bridge of the USS Excelsior, stand by tractor beam, it wouldn't. In fact, you see in the widescreen, if you see it in widescreen presentation, you see on the right hand side of the screen, you see right, you'd see him saying tractor beam, I. But when it was cropped in the VHS, you'd never see that. So I'd always hear that voice. It sounded so like strikingly odd. Tractor beam, I. And so later when I saw the widescreen version, right, it would be, oh, that's him saying it. Yeah. I guess I would have seen it in the theater too, but I just don't remember that part in detail. But anyway, yes. Pedro E says, always remember the movies I watch with my parents. Precious moments. Yes. Yes. Um, Christian's hobby blog says the only thing I didn't like about Shatner's acting in this movie is when he is super emotional with the death of his son. I think it's weird he was more emotional over David than Spock. Love his speeches. Oh, that's interesting. I think that is really interesting. I I can understand that point, especially if we remember that they kind of just met, right? In the events of Star Trek to the Wrath of Khan. They kind of just met. Although maybe we don't know. Maybe uh, Kirk was knew or met his son when he was younger, and maybe David didn't remember or something. Or maybe they'd met Carol. I don't know what the specifics of the relationship over the years between Jim Kirk and Carol Marcus were, but right, they had bonded at the end of two with that great embrace. Like, should I pat my hand now? Is that how this? Is that how hugging works? Is I hug and I right? So they had that great moment. There's not quite sure how to handle, but then we understand, therefore, that they have this emotional bond. But so I can understand. Actually, I can understand, therefore, that he is very strongly attached now to his son because now that relationship dynamic is now fully out in the open. And I should say too that um, right, it's his family, and so and he's also going through Kirk is he's going through arguably a very emotionally trying moment at this stage, not to leading up, not because of right, not least of which because of what happens to his son, but leading up to that, right, is I think Admiral Morrow says in that lounge with the I think it's the Epsilon 9 station there up as like wall decoration. He says your life and career. He's talking to Jim Kirk. He said your life and career stand for rationality, not intellectual chaos. Right? So it can be said that he is in a state of agitation because, as he says, his friend, his dearest friend, has died, and so maybe he is under a lot of emotional stress at the moment. And then that's compounded by the fact that the Enterprise is attacked. They are in what is another no-win situation. It's another Kobayashi Maru situation, which is, I think, a great way of thinking about it, especially when we understand to when in the elevator, right? He says, Kobayashi set sail for the promised land. You're taking me to the promised land. What are friends for, right? So another reference to the Kobayashi movie there directly, but also maybe indirectly too, because they are in a number of no-win situations here. But what was I saying? So yes, actually, so therefore, with all that buildup, I would say that the death of David and Kirk's reaction to that is yeah, I understand that comment. I would probably look at it a little bit differently. I would say that it is, for me personally, it is one of the most emotionally powerful moments of the film. And I think it's made even so powerful by, um, I mean, Kirk, Kirk, he's not overdoing it. He's in fact underplaying it in many ways. And there's a moment where he stands back and he stumbles and he falls. And he falls and he lands on the ground. He doesn't land on the chair, he lands on the ground. That is so significant because he sits in the chair so many times in this film. There's a moment in particular when he's stealing the Enterprise and he sits down. As he's sitting down, you hear Captain Stiles from the Excelsior say, pushes the button, said, Kirk, you do this, you'll never sit in the captain's chair again. He says this as we see Kirk sitting down into the captain's chair, and he says, warp speed. And he makes the final determination, and they go to warp speed. That's in the stealing the Enterprise sequence. But here, when David dies, he falls and he stumbles and he's lost. This is where he is so lost. And you see, he turns. Give me a minute to warn my inform my crew. I give 2 minutes to you and your gallant crew. And he turns, and it's smoky, and he's lost. He's going like this to the bar in the back, to the sport, and we see the close up of Bones. We see the close up of Scotty, and before that, of course, he says, "You Klingon bastards, you killed my son. Klingon bastards, you killed my son." Right, and this is also going to be so important for later film stories, perhaps. So, in that way, this is, I think, yeah, this is a really powerful moment. But I totally understand what you're saying here. And you say to love his speeches. I agree. I absolutely agree. Um, yeah, it's great. Yeah, David, that was incredible. Oh, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but yes, Scott Johansson, you already mentioned the quote before I got to, before, right? You mentioned it first. Well done, well done. Um, Thank you. Zarathu says, by the way, this also has tribbles. Yes, yes, in the bar scene, the canteen. Oh, sorry, wrong film. The bar scene. That's not your usual poison. And when she says that, when the waitress says that, when I was a kid, I thought like McCoy slash Spock does. It's like, oh, to order poison is illogical. Like, oh, no, no, no. When I was a kid, I thought, is this a bar where they're actually drinking poison? That's really weird. I don't want to go to the bar like this. I want to go to the bar if I can play that cool airplane game, that and you can pet the tribbles and all that. Yeah, I guess, but that I don't want to drink poison. I want to, I want to drink like I don't know, like a Pepsi or something. But anyway, yeah. Okay, so I'm scrolling down here. Sorry, I'm skipping over a number of wonderful comments. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Um, I hope you can forgive me. Eric Peeper says the Epsilon 9 model is on the wall in the restaurant Kirk and Admiral Mora have a drink in. Might it be a memorial to the crew? Yes. If I'm not mistaken, it's actually in it's visible when Kirk gets up to leave, and then he says the word is no. That I'm therefore going anyway, and he says that to Sulu and Chekhov, right? I think that's what it was, and it's actually a different color. I think I know that because it was mentioned in the commentary track, or one of the commentary tracks. So, incidentally, too, I love that moment between Morrow and Kirk, and Kirk is saying, and Kirk is asking, "Please give me a ship," and Morrow says, "Out of the question, Jim. Out of the question." Right, and I mentioned before, your life and career stand for rationality, not intimate chaos. I was going to say no, intellectual chaos, not intimate chaos. That's completely different. Well, maybe it's similar. I don't know. Intellectual chaos, and then you get that great close up into William Shatner's face. He's like, he already made the decision. And he's like, I had to try. Oh, this is Kirk. There's so many like oh, great Kirk moments here. But anyway, yes. And there's also arguably some moments where this is maybe out of character. We'll get to that fight between Kirk and Krug at the end there. But anyway, yes. So this is such a great Kirk moment. And he just the words no. I'm therefore going anyway. Ah, and this sets off in motion the plan to steal a starship, which ends up being the USS Enterprise. But we'll get to that later. And then before that, too, I should say we have a number of two other plot points that are already developing in motion. The first being as I mentioned before, the wonderful USS Grissom, and it's cataloging the development or monitoring the development of the Genesis planet. And apparently, this is the only ship that is authorized by the Federation Starfleet to be able to do this. And all their ships are restricted access. So, and Captain Esteban, standard orbit, aye, sir. Yeah, and then we have the introduction, of course, or the reintroduction of David, and then the reintroduction of Savick, but the introduction of Robin Curtis as Savick, and they go through each of these sector 1, sector 2, sector 1 is what is it? I forget. I remember these numbers like 23 point. Well, does anyone remember the Celsius temperature of sector 1? Sector 2 is the desert landscape. 39.4, I think, degrees Celsius, and then sector 3 has subtropical vegetation, but it's snow and subtropics within the same like walking distance. Fantastic, fascinating. And so we get here, and then the idea of metallic mass. There's something about the way Robin Curtis said the phrase metallic mass. I had no idea what that meant as a kid, but it was referring obviously to the metallic tube of Spock's torpedo slash coffin. Well, not coffin, but yeah, I guess it's a coffin, right? But and then we have that wonderful the life form. And so we have Esteban, who we think is very much a kind of strict, by the book type of by the book type of captain, not by the book in Star Trek II Wrath of Khan, no encoded communications on an open frequency or an open channel. Not that type of by the book. Hours can seem like days by the book, but a real by the book. Oh, you know, we're not going to beam anything on board unless we can confirm that there's going to be no risk to the crew. We're not going to do that, guys. And then Savick said, well, actually, maybe we can go down there. I don't know. You can't do that unless the captain says it's okay, guys. You can't do that. We got to do this. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm right. I'm the captain of the USS Grissom, but I don't know if you can do that unless I say you can. It's that kind of Captain Esteban type of thing. So it would have been really. I can imagine in an alternate universe. Have they written a book about this? Where could you imagine the continuing adventures of the USS Grissom if it was like who would be on the crew of the USS Grissom? It would be Captain Esteban, maybe Savick and David would be there, but also we have who could be on the crew of the USS Grissom? Okay, maybe Peter Preston from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. He could be there, and he'd be the engineer. Engineer Peter, what's going on? Can I have warp speed? I'm doing my best, Captain Esteban, but really, it's just so, this is my first time, sir. I don't know if I can do this, sir. But do your best. But I'm telling you, I'm the captain. I'm telling you that you've got to have warp power pretty soon. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. And I'm not going to be the one responsible. Yes, sir. I understand that, sir. I will do my best, sir, says Peter Preston. And then maybe the science officer is, I don't know, Sonak. And maybe right from the motion picture. And so maybe Captain Esteban. Okay, science officer, why don't you tell me what's going on down there on the planet Genesis? And then Sonak's like, thank you, but based on your recommendation, I think I've been assigned here to the USS Excelsior, and so I'm very, very honored to be able to act as science officer under your guidance and command. Well, thank you very much, Sonic. Why don't you do this? Why don't you go down to the planet's surface and do some direct readings? I will give you my direct authority to be able to do that because I, as captain, am permitted, and you can only do so if I tell you it's okay. And Commander Sonek said, okay, thank you very much, Captain. By the way, how should I go down there? Would you like me to go down there by ship shuttle? And maybe Esteban says, no, Sonak, I think what a better idea is, don't go down to the planet's surface by shuttle. I think you should take the transporter. And Sonak's like, you want me to take the transporter? Yes, Sonak, go down, beam down to the surface, use the transporter. I don't think there should be any problem with the transporter beam, do you? And Sonak's like, uh, um, have you seen the motion picture? Like, do you know what's going to happen? No, I don't think it's going to be a problem, Sonak, but I'm the captain. I'm telling you, go down using the transporter. And Sonak's like, goes down to the transporter. That would be so cool. The continuing adventures of the USS Grissom. By the way, when you're under attack, what was his first instinct? His first instinct was to say, stand by for evasive, right? Did he have his shields up? I don't know if his shields were up. If his shields were up, I would assume that a Federation class starship like the USS Grissom would have shields that would be strong enough to withstand at least one torpedo attack from a hostile ship. That's my assumption. Maybe I'm wrong. But he didn't say, or we didn't see him say when the bird of prey is attacking the Grissom, he didn't say anything about shields up. He says, we're under attack. Stand by, evasive. And then Krug says, bah, and it explodes. Shotane! A lucky shot, sir. And he's, and then, right, so, say the wrong thing, Torg. Torg, who has a very, like, Johnny Depp, Captain Jack Sparrow type of vibe to him. We'll get to that later as well. But yes, so the USS Grissom, what was I talking about with it? I seem to get worked up. I'm getting worked up today whenever I talk about the USS Grissom for some reason. I don't know. But anyway, what was I saying? Yes, so Savick and David, now we see that plot thread in their exploration of the Genesis planet and leading to the following what is happening to Spock. And here we have the introduction of Robin Curtis. Now, I want to say, too, that Robin Curtis is really great. She has the way that she's delivering the lines, which is, it's very monotone, but there's this edge of, or this sense of real use of showing a kind of emotion through the monotone delivery. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's kind of evident here. There's a little bit of an excitement that's toned down because of the fact that she is either half Vulcan or Vulcan. But there's that aspect, and then the but it's that monotone delivery that still hints at the emotion, which is really powerful. I think one of the great line deliveries is after David has been killed. She says, "Admiral, David is dead," and she enunciates each word. But you can tell that it's just the most devastating thing. Obviously, it's so devastating, but she delivers it in that monotone way that still conveys the devastating effect that this immediate moment has had upon her. So I think Robin Curtis is great. I think she's wonderful. That's not to take anything away from Kirstie Alley, but it's another great interpretation going forward. So that's one aspect, and then the discovery of the burial robe and young boy who we understand is Spock, but is growing up, and then the link, and then the later, it's time for truth between us, and then this is the discovery of the fact that David, who was one of the scientists, the key scientist, together with his mother, who is conspicuously absent, by the way, here. So, but uh, um, David is, we understand that he used a very controversy regarded and unstable uh, substance, which is referred to as protomatter in the Genesis matrix, which means, therefore, in essence, that the planet is unstable, and therefore it is not just unstable, it'll probably disintegrate or destroy itself within a matter of, he reveals, days or maybe even hours. So the Genesis experiment is a failure. So this is the idea. And also we understand that the discovery of Spock means that, well, okay, I'll get to Spock later. And then we have, that's one ball of subplot that is on already rolling. The other ball of subplot that's on its way rolling is the Klingons and the Krug. And we have not just Krug and Torg, we have Krug, Torg, and Maltz. John Larroquette fans rejoice. Anyone who's a fan of John Larroquette, I know, I think when one speaks of John Larroquette, things come to mind like Night Court. I think other things come to mind, like, say, I don't know, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know Texas Chainsaw Massacre has gotten a lot of um, a lot of word lately because of, I think, some recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre offerings, shall we say. But yes, John Larroquette, impressive. They can make planets. And then, of course, Torg, who's, as I say, has that Johnny Depp, Captain Jack Sparrow down cold. If you, all right, if you invited, if you imagine if you had a Halloween party and you invited all your friends and you say, "Oh, come on over to my house and we're gonna have a Halloween party. Let's have everyone dress up in their favorite costumes." Oh, and you invite your friends like, Jim and Sally and Torg and others, and they all come costume, and then the last person to arrive is Torg, your Klingon friend. And the doorbell rings. Oh, that must be Torg. You open the door, and Torg is just he who he is. Oh, Torg, you didn't dress up, and Torg's like, I'm in costume. What are you talking about? Well, who are you dressed up? I'm dressed up as Captain Jack Sparrow, and everyone's like, oh, right. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, Torg has that great line delivery and also that Captain Jack Sparrow vibe. And then, of course, we have that reveal. Share this with no one. Understood, my lord. Sees the secret of this weapon. Secret of ultimate power. Success, my lord. Right. So this is the Klingon plot is now underway as well. So all these things are converging. So the Kirk plot and the Klingon plot and the Genesis plot. Oh, and also, by the way, speaking of the Kirk plot, I forgot to mention too, and I'll get to the chat. But the other plot is the Spock plot, and I hinted at this too in terms of the body of Spock landing in Genesis, and for some reason, maybe getting caught up in the Genesis wave radiation that David kind of explains, but kind of doesn't. But that's okay. That's okay. We understand that Spock's body has now regenerated to the point where he is growing up at an accelerated rate maybe we understand as a child, and then as a young boy, and then growing up. And this is where we see him and see. While at the same time, we understand too that when Sarek comes to the apartment, that wonderful towering inferno apartment of Jim Kirk, he is distraught. This is the first time we've seen Sarek in all these wilds, as I've referred to. And he says, I must have your thoughts. May I join your mind? And this is the mind meld between Vulcan and human. It is voluntary, but we will talk about a kind of forced or kind of really disturbing mind meld scene in maybe a later film. But here we have this moment of Sarek needing to understand the final moments of what happened. And so he says, having the mind meld, and he's having, I must share it, I must join. And then you have that great exchange, the close up of the eye of Kirk and the close up of the lips of your friend. No. And then he says, forgive me, it's not here. And he realizes that the Katra, his spirit, he thought that Spock would have essentially donated his Katra into Kirk before going into that radiation-filled chamber for this final dying moment. And that's what Sarek had assumed. But Sarek is now discovered that the Katra is not within Kirk. So everything is gone. And then Kirk says, no, he would have found a way. If he knew that was important, Spock would have found a way. We've got to summon first. How, Kirk? How would have he found another way? It would have, no, maybe he met someone else before me. Yes, Kirk. Maybe. How can we discover this? I think one way that we can discover what Spock did before he went into that radiation chamber at the end of Wrath of Khan is if we go to the computer log, and we can see exactly what happened. Yes, Kirk, I can understand that, but how can we see the final events of what happened on the Enterprise and what happened with Spock? It's very simple. All we have to do is put in this VHS tape. What is this VHS tape? It is called Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I see. So we can watch this VHS tape of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and we can fast forward and rewind. We don't have to fast forward and rewind. We can ask the computer to do it for us. That's a great idea, Kirk. So that's what they do. They essentially rewatch and they fast forward and rewind to various scenes of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. So I understand this is the way the ship's computer and the cameras were there, and they were situated in exactly the same spots that Nicholas Meyer's crew situated the camera for Star. I know. I'm just joking around here, but the idea is they're relying on the ship's computer to see that in fact, and like ship's computer, gosh, I mean, I know it's a computer and maybe it's AI and all this stuff, but just, gosh, computer, just have some tact, would you? If you go to the ship's catalog, don't go immediately to the moment where Kirk is now talking to the dying Spock and like, a ship out of date. And like, you could see Kirk's like, computer, back 0.76. Come on, don't show me. I don't want to see this computer. Come on, and then just going to the point there of McCoy, right? Remember that moment where he touched his face. Remember, McCoy. There's one alive, one dead, yet both in pain. And so that is the final plot here. What must I do? You must take them both to Mount Saleya on Vulcan, and there they might hope to find peace. And then what you ask is difficult. You will find a way, Kirk. And certainly he does. So these are the threads that are in motion. The Kirk-Spock thread, and then the Genesis thread, and then the Klingon thread. And they are now on a collision course. Now, before we get to that collision course, let me now go to the chat. Okay. Yes, all right. Sorry about this. I'm skipping over. Oh, yes. Christian's Hobby Blog says, my other nitpick for the intro scenes is the camera footage they're watching to find out what happened to McCoy and Spock in Wrath of Khan. I think it's not as immersive seeing them watch a DVD. Yes, yes. Yeah, so right, they didn't have chapter menus, I suppose, back in the back, in the 21st century. I suppose you could just go to the chapter where it says Spock talks to McCoy before going into radiation chamber. Oh, maybe that might be it. Let's go to chapter whatever 22. I mean, yeah. Um, Yes, 5 bags of popcorn. Thank you. In the opening credits, there is an extra long pause between William Shatner and DeForest Kelly's names, where Leonard Nimoy's name would normally be. Yes, yes, I forgot to mention that. You're absolutely right. It's a sequence of names, but instead of the timing, it's William Shatner, DeForest Kelly. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's very famous. Thank you for reminding us of that. I forgot to mention that. You're right. Thank you. Okay, skipping here. Bartholomew says the prop master on Halloween also picked up a Spock mask, but after some consideration decided it wasn't suitable. Interesting. Okay, scrolling down. Scott C. The destruction of the Enterprise was massively controversial at the time. And if I remember correctly, it was in the TV commercials for this film as well. So, okay, I think, yeah. And that was one of the things that Leonard Nimoy kind of complained about. And you mentioned this in one of the commentary tracks, I think, or something, yeah. Um, oh, Scott Johansson says Styles was played by, oh, yes, the Hill Street Blues. Thank you for mentioning Hill Street Blues. I have to mention this. My mom, who's no longer with us. She now it's been several years since she died. Now, she was a piano player, and one of the things that I just remember growing up, I can't play the piano for the life of me, but I remember I have memories of her playing the piano and the music echoing throughout the house. And I remember one of the first things I remember her playing, and it would just be things that the theme, it would be the Hill Street Blues theme, right? Da 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 da. Right, that's the Hill Street Blues theme, right? So da 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 da. Yes, and my mom loved that. She loved that theme so much. She would play that so much. She played that, and she loved Scott Joplin. She loved Scott Joplin, and I just remember the two Scott Joplin tunes that she would always play would be The Entertainer, Maple Leaf Rag, or not, I guess three: Maple Leaf Rag, Entertainer, and Solace. To this day, whenever I hear Solace, I stop and I just am in a completely different world. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, yes. So the Hill Street. I hope I have that is the Hill Street Blues theme, right? If I have that completely wrong, then my whole childhood is now like completely damaged forever. But anyway, I hope that's right. But anyway, yes. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Let's see. Oh, Bartholomew says it's a great apartment, very Hitchcock. Oh, could you imagine Admiral Kirk starring in a 23rd century version of Rear Window? Wow, could you imagine? Like he's got these, he can't see because right, his vision. He's got the eyeglasses, but when he puts on his eyeglasses, he looks out the window and he sees on the other side of, I read of the bay. Is that San Francisco Bay? I don't know. If you mention Hitchcock, I have to say, right, I can't do James Stewart, but to do my best, still admittedly very poor impersonation of James Stewart in the Alfred Hitchcock film. It's not Rear Window, but it's Vertigo. He says, when Kim Novak's character says, "What am I doing here? What happened?" And then James Stewart says, "Well, you fell into San Francisco Bay." So and I can imagine, like maybe if it was Kirk, what am I doing here? What happened? And Captain Kirk, not Scotty, is playing Scotty, or maybe it's Scotty who's playing Scotty. Well, you fell into San Francisco Bay, or maybe it's Captain Kirk or Admiral Kirk. Well, you fell into San Francisco Bay. Yeah. Anyway, Sorry about that. That would be so cool. A crossover between Hitchcock and Star Trek. Wow, wow. The possibilities are infinite. Wow. Anyway, Bartholomew, well done. Wow, wow. Okay. Let's see here. How are we on time? We're still good. Good, good. All right. Oh, W Forge is here. Hello, hello. Thank you so much. W Forge, I have to say, after your great comment on Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, I have been thinking, and rethinking the whole thing about how the Genesis planet formed and the Mutara Nebula stuff, right? I still not sure. I can't quite wrap my head around it, but I'm totally. I haven't forgotten your great comment about that, my friend. So thank you so much. And indeed, in this film, Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, the Genesis planet is described as being in the Mutara sector, which is, of course, reminding us of the fact that the explosion of the Reliant took place in the, or maybe somewhere in the vicinity of, or inside what was known in that film as the Mutara Nebula, which we understand is probably named for the fact that it was a nebula that was found floating in Mutara space. Now, what is Mutara itself? I actually don't know, but anyway, yes. So there's that. Yeah, so thank you very much, W Forge. It's nice to see you, by the way. Scott C. Yes, the Sting. Yes, the Entertainer. The Entertainer was a Scott Joplin work that was then used many years after the fact in a film quite memorably, which is called The Sting. You're absolutely right. Yes. Yes, Bartholomew says, yes, thank you for following up. You say, San Francisco, Vertigo was set there and has a similar style apartment. Yes, yes. Also, actually, maybe it's not necessarily Scotty's apartment. I would say, for those of you who know Vertigo, Kirk's apartment reminds me more of Gavin Elster's office at the beginning of the film, where Gavin Elster is talking to Scotty about, I've got to know, Scotty. I've got to know what happens to my wife, Madeline. I want you to follow her. And so, Gavin, I don't know. I'm no longer in the force. I retired. I don't want to drink. It's a little bit early for me here. But anyway, yeah, so it reminds me a lot of that because, right, because in the film Vertigo, there's this whole thing about the past, portals of the past. People back then had freedom and power and all these paintings of ships and shipbuilding. In the background of Gavin Elser's office, you see shipbuilding, etc., and artifacts and antiques. That's very much like Captain, or why do I say Captain? Admiral Kirk, excuse me, Admiral Kirk, and his apartment and the antiques and relics, etc. So, anyway, okay. Let's see. Okay, so now going back to so I'm sorry, I'm skipping over a number of comments here, but and you, Paul Ablett, you say, motion picture remains my favorite Trek movie, but the theft of the Enterprise and the destruction of Enterprise are my favorite sequences from any Trek film. I'll get to that as well. But just to give you a sneak preview, I feel the same. I feel the same. But okay, Paul, thank you. Okay, I feel the same, my dear friend. Yes. Anyway, going back to the film, and I'll go to the live chat again here. Sorry for skipping over so many. I hope you can forgive me. Please, please forgive me. But I will go back momentarily. Now, going back to the film, as I say, we have all these plot threads now in motion. Now, one of those plot threads is the Kirk plot thread. Intertwined in that is Bones. Bones, we understand, is now the what we understand in the great words of the dialogue of Dame Judith Anderson at the end, the keeper of the Katra, who is, this is Spock's soul or Spock's living spirit, somehow inside McCoy's brain. I guess McCoy's brain, right? It seems like, Admiral, that I've got all his marbles, he says later. It's not, yeah, this is Spock's brain. For those of you who know the original series, Spock's brain is somehow inside McCoy's brain. Spock's brain and McCoy's brain. That's interesting. Okay, so he goes to this bar with the great airplane fight thing game. I'd love to play that. I'd love to play that video game, and I'd love to play the Never Say Never Again James Bond video game, Domination. Right? Who made it? For those of you who know, Largo. I designed it myself. right? But anyway, so domination and that video game, that airplane video game, I love to play that. Tribbles are there, and also this kind of, I don't know what this. Uh, who are you? Name not important. You seek I, right? And we understand that this is someone that uh, uh, McCoy wants to hire, who has a ship, who it might agree to take him to some named destination, but they don't know what the named destination is. He's got this interesting way of manner of speaking, and so. But he wants to know where McCoy wants to take him, and McCoy at first is hesitant to mention exactly where. Just say, "Name your price, I'll pay it." And then he says, "Place you name, money I name, otherwise bargain no." And he says, "All right, Genesis. The place you want to go to Genesis, right?" And so and he says, something about his ears and the sign, right? And so, Genesis allowed is planet forbidden, right? And then we get that scene of the security officer, and he assaults the security, tries to with the Vulcan neck pinch, but it fails spectacularly. And you get that great look on McCoy's face. He's like, oh, it's great. And then also at the end of that scene, also at the beginning of the scene, when he enters the bar, and also when he says, "Oh, you're gonna have a nice long rest, Doctor." You see the little eyebrow raise at the start and also at the end of this film, almost at bookends. And so that's really cool. And I'd like to think that that is a little callback to Spock. That's a Spock part of McCoy acting out there. So that's really cool. And then that leads to the sequence of McCoy being essentially incarcerated, and what's that's phrase when Kirk visits him and the guards. He says, "I hear he's what is it? I hear he's fruity as a nutcake." Right? Did I get that right? And he said, "How many fingers am I on? That's not very damn funny." Well, his sense of humor is returned, and he gives him a shot. And I love the how should I this is like the thing that he injects his finger with, and I love the little gesture that William Shatner is. It kind of extends his arm out. This will make you safe enough to travel. I love that. So cool. I don't know why I remember that detail. I just love that little detail. And then, so the idea is they're going to break McCoy out because they need McCoy with them. The idea is they're going to take McCoy, get Spock, and then go to Mount Seleya on Vulcan. Okay, so then the whole plot is in motion. And then Sulu arrives and he says, Commander Starfleet wants him right away, asking for Kirk. And then that scene with the guard keeping you, Leon's keeping you busy. Don't get smart, tiny. Yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on this kind of unfortunate series of events, but anyway, we understand we have this action sequence of Sulu. We have seen Sulu in action before in certain very memorable moments of the series, but now we have this moment here that don't call me tiny, going into that wonderfully bland door with like the bars painted like grayish blue, and I love the little what is that thing he pushes? It's like a little flashlight. Dude, I thought that was the coolest thing as a kid watching it. And just goes in. And you have that great moment of Kobayashi Maru sets sail for the promised land. You're taking me to the promised land. What are friends for? And we got the great, and already here, the fashion. I've got to point out the coats. We're getting the cool coats here. Uh, um, Sulu has a great getup, that brown leather and blue, and we've got Kirk with that cool coat with that collar, and then of course Bones McCoy with that like tannish brown um, get up. Oh, great stuff. Oh, wonderful. And then we go to the bridge of the Enterprise. Before that, we get that small exchange in the engineering hall of the USS Excelsior, and the exchange between Scotty and Styles. Oh, I'm looking forward to breaking some of the Enterprise speed records tomorrow with that great stick, that great whatever that stick is. Yeah, and he's level please, transporter. Thank you. Up your shaft. And Scotty's there and just going to the darkened room of the Enterprise bridge there. And I love the bit where you see. Oh, I'm sorry. Before that, of course, Uhura. Why did I forget Uhura? This is a key moment too. In the lieutenant who's also stationed with Uhura mentions as being in this transporter room out in the middle of seemingly nowhere. This is the hind end of space, according to the lieutenant. Peace and quiet appeals to me. Lieutenant, yeah, but that may be good for you, whose career is winding down, but not for me. I want some action, adventure in my life, you know? And then going in, and this is Admiral, that's Admiral Kirk. My God, step into my parlor, gentlemen, in that great moment. And have you lost all sense of reality? This isn't reality. This is fantasy. Oh, you feeling a little rushed? I don't know. Get in the closet. Get in the closet. Oh, get in the closet, Mr. Adventurer. Get in the closet. It's like I'm getting in the closet. All right. Right. And what was it? McCoy's, oh, I'm glad you're on our side. Can you take care of it? Oh, I'll have Mr. Adventure eating out in my hand. And I'll see the rest of you at the rendezvous. Oh, and Admiral, all my hopes. That line and the way that Nichelle Nichols delivers that line, all my hopes, that touches my heart. Oh, I love that moment so much. There's so much, like, it speaks so much. And it's just between like a friend to a friend and like a comrade to a comrade. And you can, it's just everything is hanging on that moment. And then they beam aboard the Enterprise bridge, and you see the light turn on. Then, so that's great. Speaking of Mr. Adventure, who's, I think that's his name in the credits, right? Mr. Adventure, I think, right? So Mr. Adventure. It would be cool. Like, his name is, we don't know what his name is, but would it be cool if his name was actually Adventure? What's your name? I don't know. John. What's your last name, John? John Adventure. Oh, that's a really cool name. Yes, yes. I want to be a Starfleet officer, and later he becomes lieutenant, stationed in this transporter room section here. Lieutenant Adventure, right? And could you imagine, right, at the end of, right, at the end, how Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, ends with the wonderful dawn shot in the distance of Mount Solea, or the temple atop Mount Solea, or kind of on the side of Mount Solea, or whatever. And it says, then the adventure continues. Could you imagine if it was, and Mr. Adventures continue, or something like that? You hear the voice of Lieutenant Adventure coming up the steps of Mount Solea. Hey, don't forget me. I just came out of the closet. Here, I'm going to go and join your adventures, guys, because I want to be part of your crew. I want some adventure and action in my life. Perhaps a little bit of excitement, Oh, gosh. And then could you imagine Kirk saying, all right, I have a good idea. Why don't you go and talk to my friend, who is Captain Esteban? So we have the crew, the continuing adventures of the crew of the USS Grissom. So we have Captain Esteban, we have Peter Preston in engineering, we have Commander Sonak, and also we have Mr. Adventure, Lieutenant Adventure. That is a real great crew. Wonderful, exciting. I'd love to see that. So great. Incidentally, too, right? He goes inside that sliding door closet there. I mentioned too that Kirk or Shatner looks so Michael Myers. He looks the most Michael Myers, I think, of any Star Trek film. I think that's my personal view. So remember in the film Halloween, there's a sequence. I don't want to go into too much detail for those who haven't seen Halloween, but there's a sequence where a key character is in a closet, and there's a character called Michael Myers with this mask, and just going into the closet there. Could you imagine if Mr. Adventure was in that closet in Star Trek 3, and like Kirk is trying to get in? He's like, like, and Adventure's like, oh no, help me! He's trying to get a wire, right? The thing, and that would be cool. That would be such a cool thing. Like, Kirk is trying to break into the closet, whose face is very much like Michael Myers' mask, as he's trying to do something similar in a separate film. But anyway, okay, what was I saying? So that is the beginnings of the, as Paul Ablett, our dear friend, is mentioning, as well as many other fans of Star Trek, this is the beginning of one of the greatest sequences in all of Star Trek history, the stealing of the Enterprise. I will say, for the record right now, this is probably in my viewing of Star Trek, this is my most like rewatched sequence, probably, of any sequence in any Star Trek moment. And that includes the episodes. This is probably like my most watched Star Trek moment. I watch this constantly. The stealing of the Enterprise. Everything is perfect. It starts with the build-up, and then that great moment where all the preparations have been made, and then Kirk says the final ask of the people there. And my friends, I can't ask you any further. Dr. Poy, I have to do this. The rest of you do not. And everyone gives their own way of saying, I want to go along, Captain. And so Chekhov says, Admiral, we're losing precious time. Ah. And then Sulu says, what course, please, Admiral? And then all the way you see James Doohan's face, the actor who plays Scotty. You see his face, and he looks like he's almost kind of thinking. Another thing too is watch Scotty's face. When he might not be talking, but he's speaking volumes in his facial expressions. One of the sequences is in this moment, and he says, "I'd be grateful, Admiral, if you'd give the word." He says, "Gentlemen, may the wind be at our backs. Stations. Da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. 1/4 impulse power. 1/4 done. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And here we go. This is it. Da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. And the models, I want to say here, the model work is incredible. It's epic. And I so much admire that they're moving 1/4 impulse power. And then when they, right, at first because they're inside the space dock, and it's slow. It's so slow. I love this. I love the slow pace. This is perfect. The tension is just off the charts amazing. And then the sound effects. And you've got the wonderful, the dialogue, Excelsior, and that great cut into, Commander Starfleet on emergency channel. He orders you to surrender this vessel. No reply, Chekhov. And I got the scene with the Captain Styles and the little bit of nail that he couldn't find. Rich, how can you have a yellow alert inside in Stardust? Sir, someone's stealing the Enterprise. And you got that look. I'll be on my way. And the first thing he does is he grabs his stick and he goes, oh! Captain Styles, yes, alert, alert, alert. And then the guy cleaning up the lounge there, you see him and the thing moving, and you just want to walk through them. Calm yourself, dog, talking about the doors, right? And then all the time, the doors are still closed. And then we also hear the thing, Excelsior powering up with orders to pursue. And then walking in that great walk of Captain Styles and then putting right? 1/4 impulse power. And then we're closing in those space doors. Warning! Warning! And now, Mrs. What? The doors, Mrs. Scott. I know, I'm working on. And everyone's like, oh, this is so great. This is great. And this is the moment here. This is the moment when you cut to the ship going through, just barely making the space doors. You get the shot of the console from the opposite angle, and you get the shot of Sulu and Scotty sitting there, and then Kirk standing over them. And then Sulu says, "We have cleared space doors." And then the ship goes da dun da dun da. It goes like it's like backing up da dun dun da. Right. So that's really cool stuff. James Horner music is kicking into high gear without question, without question. But go back to that shot where Sulu says, "We have cleared space doors." Kirk is looking over like this, and he's looking out through what we see as understand as the viewer. This is the most Michael Myers that Kirk is looking in this film. That's my contention. That look on his face is the most Michael Myers-y that he looks. It's really cool. But okay. And then full impulse power because they've already cleared the door. So they were already 1/4 impulse power inside, but now they've cleared. So he says full impulse power. Full impulse. And the beautiful music of James Horner. It's like I've mentioned, it's like Enterprise is free. It's now on its flight, and we understand too it'll be its last flight. But anyway, it's beautiful. And it's free. It's like a bird whose wings have been broken wings have been healed. And then, he thinks he can get away with warp. Oh, he's really in for a shock. And now both ships are out. They've cleared the space doors. Excelsior closing it. Right, it's gone rolling all the power. I sir, warp speed standing by. And then we have that great moment I mentioned earlier. Styles says, "Kirk, you do this, you'll never sit in the captain's chair again." He says this as he sits in the chair. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't care." He's like, warp speed, and then the moment this is the James Horner music that is so cool. This and then it goes into warp speed. This piece of music, by the way, this build-up music is so awesome. It is used actually at the very end of the closing credits of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. But to my memory, this piece of music itself was never used within the film itself. It's so cool, therefore, to see it applied in this way in the ultimate, say, climax of this sequence, the sealing of the Enterprise sequence. And then goes into the like Excelsior theme, I suppose. Prepare for war, stand by, transwarp drive. And he says full power available. And he says execute. He doesn't say engage. He doesn't say warp speed. He says execute. So Captain Styles is a kind of he likes to use the word execute. And then like good morning, Captain. Oh, I don't understand what's going on. And that's the end of the Excelsior, at least for now. And then the more they overthink the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the drain. And he took little pieces of what he understood, like the main control interface to the transwarp drive, and he gives these little pieces of like bolts or whatever to McCoy. Thanks for telling me in advance, guys, what you guys were doing. I was just standing there, just like pinned, like I was just on edge. What was going to happen? Well, that's what you get for missing staff meetings, Doc. What can I tell you? All right, best speed to jettison. Pew! All right, that's it. That's a great sequence. That is, as I say, my most rewatched sequence in all of Star Trek. I love this sequence. It's perfect. And I get it too, that bridge when I was a kid, the Excelsior Bridge, I thought looked cool. Now that I look back at it now, it's pretty flat there, but that's okay. Everything. Oh, that's so cool. That is such a cool sequence. So cool. And also, I remember. Let me say too here. When I was a kid, I was in this like whatever music store in, I forget, maybe it was in a mall in this place called Stamford, Connecticut. It was a mall in downtown Stamford, Connecticut. And I forget exactly when it was, but and for those of you who might know what I'm talking about. I don't know if it's still there, that mall in downtown Stamford, Connecticut, but it was near the exit of or the exit to the Interstate 95, I-95. And in fact, that mall was situated in a place where you could actually see in the distance the building of what was known at the time as being the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF. You could see the WWF logo there, but that was nearby in this mall. And inside the mall, there were, of course, a number of stores, included in which was a store called Suncoast, and also the Sharper Image. But also there was another store, I forget the name of it now, but it was a music store. So if my memory is not incorrect here, I remember going into that store and going to the soundtrack section, and they had cassette tapes, because at the time they'd be selling cassette tapes. This was before CDs. And so I would be buying the cassette tapes. I was looking for whatever. I don't know what I was there. And I remember this guy comes up, and he's just looking there, and it's this kind of adult guy. And I think his wife was there or something, and she guys just goes to me and says, "Excuse me, can you help me with something? I'm sorry, I don't want to bother you too much, but can you help me?" I say, "Sure. What are you looking for?" And he says, "I'm looking for this soundtrack for this film called Star Trek III: The Search for Spock." And it's like, "Yeah, I love that film. Oh, that's so cool!" And we were trying to look for the cassette tape for the soundtrack for Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, and we found it. I think it was there. And it was, you pulled. Oh, this is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. And we were talking about just random guy, and we're talking about, oh, that scene where they're stealing the Enterprise. That's the coolest scene. His eyes, yes, I love that scene. That's the greatest music. And we bonded over Star Trek III and this particular music. It was great. It was great. So anyway, yeah. So and then I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he bought the soundtrack. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah. Cooper Glover says, would it be HMV Strawberries? I don't think so. Again, I don't remember Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, W4 says Kirk planned to recommend them all for promotions in whatever Starfleet they ended up serving. Yes, and you see um, Sulu's face like, yeah, best speed to Genesis. Shoo! Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, that's great. I love your recall, your ability to recall W4. Well done. Yeah, keep up the excellent work, my friend, and all of you. Well done. You guys are fantastic. Fantastic. Yes. Um, all right. Let's see. So, and then we have then the continuing on of the exploration of Spock and the body of Spock growing up into adolescence and manhood throughout, and we understand that his body is somehow linked to the over sped up growth and regeneration and degeneration of the Genesis planet, and that leads to this rapid aging, according to Savick. And then this leads to a number of sequences. So the first being, well, before we get to the confrontation between the Klingons and the and the Enterprise, let's go to the story between Savick and now a growing up Spock. And so we have David now trying to explore. He is now feeling guilty because of the revelation that he used protomatter in what we understand is probably a scientifically unethical manner, and he's confronted by this by Savick savagely, right? Um, like your father, you changed the rules. A slight dig, a Kobayashi Maru dig at David, who was actually doing the same thing to his father, who Kirk in part two. Now, Savick is giving giving what David gave to Kirk, right? So, and so, right. How many have paid for your impatience? How many have died? Um, and what is the price to be paid, and what is left to come, what is there to come? And then so this leads to David maybe feeling guilty and trying to go out and search for something, leaving Savick and the young Spock, growing Spock, alone. And then we realize that Spock is now rapidly aging, but from the mythology of Vulcan males, we understand too that the the growth of Vulcan males is such that every 7 years they have to purge themselves of their pent up emotion, which is kind of like akin to like sexual frustration or urges, etc., and desires as well. And this is something that is referred to as Ponfar. And Ponfar was something that we heard about in the original series, but now we get also a further exploration of this Ponfar. And what this essentially means is Savick is understanding that this is a very essential part of Vulcan growing up. And so, so it has come. And now it is time. And so she goes to a young, maybe now confused Spock. Again, Katra less Spock. And then she does the thing with the fingers, right? And the finger. So I thought that this was that I thought that was what was going on, and I thought in my mind, oh, Ponfar, this is Ponfar. I don't know. Okay, so that's all they did. So they did like, what's the phrase they did? Um, finger playing. I don't. Can I say that? And you. So then I thought that was it. And then we see them were asleep. I didn't. When I was a kid, I didn't know. I didn't put the pieces together as to what happened between the that particular moment and then the next time we see them and they're asleep and they're kind of holding hands. So I didn't quite put two and two together until much later. And so I was, oh, I see. That's what happened between the end of that scene and the next time we see them, I guess early morning. So yeah. So and that explains a lot too. There's a moment when Spock has returned at the end, and he's looking at each of the faces of the people there in Mount Soleil, and the first person that he sees is Savick, and Savick is looking, and she kind of looks away, almost embarrassed. And Robin Curtis mentions in a documentary or commentary wherever how uh, Leonard Nimoy's director to actor direction to her was react as though you're meeting someone that you once loved, but who maybe you haven't seen in a long time, and you're embarrassed, and that sort of thing. And I when I heard that, I kind of I see, that's why, that's why. So there was right some there was some there was a kind of intimacy, let's say, between the two of them. So that was something that is, I think, very key when one thinks of the Spock Savick relationship, which we also saw, of course, in the second film, the earlier film, and now we have that development. Of course, it's maybe in some very specific circumstances too. Maybe there wasn't necessarily emotion involved in terms of some kind of relationship between the two of them per se, although it might have been hinted at, although might not. We might see some kind of follow through or conclusion to this particular arc when we get to future films. Let me put it that way. So this is a very important aspect. And then we have, of course, as I alluded to, the Klingon approach to the Genesis planet, and their plot, Krug's plot to obtain what he calls, "You will tell me the secret of the Genesis torpedo. I have no knowledge. I know pain is something you enjoy." And so this is, but of course, it destroys or accidentally destroys the USS Grissom. He didn't want. He wanted prisoners. Shutani! I mentioned that before, and they go down to the planet. They go see the worm. And, nothing happened here, Bridge. Don't worry. And you see that the sunset. That's great stuff. And we see more hints at what Krug as a character is. We also get a sense of his strength and hands. We'll see too later when he's in fisticuff action with Kirk. He sees him. He seizes him by the throat. So maybe we see that early on, that he's really strong, physically speaking, that he can squeeze the black goo out of this worm thing. Anyway, so what was I saying? Yes, and so there we have the Klingon plot, where they colliding with the Genesis plot, and Savick and David, and then the capturing of these three prisoners on the planet as the Enterprise approaches. And so we have that great confrontation. And I've come all the way. I can't again do the Christopher Lloyd voice justice, but and what do I find? A weakling human, a Vulcan boy, and a woman. And Marty! 1.21 gigawatts! Ah! And then, of course, as they're trying to figure out what's going to happen, Torg is in the bridge, alerting Krug on the surface that a Federation cruiser is approaching. Beam me up. And so he's aboard the ship, and we are cloaked. And we have also the introduction of this I guess, unit of distance, which is called kilocams, of 5,000 range, 5,000 kilocams. Good. This is just a turn of events I've been searching for. And we see from the Klingon point of view the approach of the Enterprise. And please note this too: the approach of the Enterprise from the distance there is at an angle, and it's like this, and that angle is very much like the angle of the Enterprise as we saw it in the opening credits of the original series. It's kind of like it's down and downward pointed diagonally going forward, and that is a really important angle too. We'll see that angle reappear several scenes after this. So this is a very important thing. So the prisoners, the three of them, are on the planet with two Klingon guards. We have the bird of prey cloaked. Maltz, Torg, and Krug are together. And then of course we have the very minimally stationed Enterprise with a kind of skeleton crew now approaching. And then they sense, and then that great moment where they're trying to reach out to the Grissom that they don't know has already been destroyed. It's like, Grissom, this is Enterprise calling. Please respond. Grissom, this is Enterprise calling. Please come in. Grissom, this is Enterprise. So we got that, no response, and then we have the final assault. And then you see the energy surge, something, you can see the bit there. Looks like an energy surge, enough to hide a shipwreck. Cloaking device, red alert. Wage, no shields. My guess is they have to decloak before they can fire. So we have this idea of the bird of prey is cloaked as a cloaking device, but it can only fire when it's decloaked. Now, this is also going to be a very significant detail that will come up perhaps in a later film, but let's remember this, okay? It can only, and that's just Kirk's guess, and it's a really good guess, and we find out it's correct. And it decloaks, and it's Sulu, as we said earlier. He recognizes immediately what this is, Klingon bird of prey, sir. He's arming torpedoes. Fire missile gun, and we see the undamaged part of the Enterprise with the torpedo thing there, and it fires away. Good shooting, Mr. Scott. And everyone's like it's fireworks exploding, and only Krug is like, what's going? And the dog. I was like, my dog. You killed. Like, could you imagine if Keanu Reeves as John Wick was Commander Krug on the bird of prey that is now being attacked by the USS Enterprise? Could you imagine that? Yeah. Right. Keanu Reeves as Commander Krug. But anyway, so like emergency power. Dun, 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 dun. The shields aren't responding, because he didn't expect us to go into combat, and then the explosion actually fires up the part where Kirk is standing. So we get one of the Kirk groans here. Oh, which is very similar to the Roger Moore James Bond groan. Oh, but it has that. Oh, I don't know, and we'll hear the Kirk groan again in the fighting scene on Genesis, but here's that emergency, everything's done, so now we're sitting duck. He tries to bluff his way out, but Krug is clever. He is clever. Nothing gets by him, so he understands that he has the upper hand, not Kirk. And so this is, he exploits this, and he reveals his upper hand too, is that he has prisoners on the planet, and if he doesn't surrender, then he will execute the prisoners one at a time. And to show his resolve, he will kill one of the prisoners. No, hey, Shaba, hey. I was trying to say, kill one of them. I don't care which. And so he has the choice left up to the guards on the planet, and that knife, that scary knife, and like David, and before that we have the exchange between David and Kirk. Said, what went wrong, David? I went wrong, sir. I don't understand. Genesis doesn't work. I don't believe they'll kill us for. Admiral, your young friend is mistaken. And then we have Savick, who probably was going to get killed, but then David, as a last moment of heroism, jumps in and protects her, and he fights, tries to fight, but in the end, of course, it doesn't work out. And that really sad moment, we hear that kind of, that voice that he makes, it kind of comes from the guttural from the back of his throat as he is killed. And we have in the foreground like some grass or something, some bushes, just to block it. But it's horrifying, and I mentioned that Savick says, Admiral David is dead in that moment, right? That scene that we mentioned earlier. And he says, I surrender. And this is actually a ploy to buy time, right? And he says, give me a minute to inform my crew. I give 2 minutes to you and your gallant crew. And this is the plot where Krug says to Torg, get every man for a boarding party armed. We are Klingons! We are Klingons who are speaking English when we are also speaking Klingon. And this is a moment, too, I should point out. On the bridge of the bird of prey, sometimes they're speaking English, sometimes they're speaking Klingon. So I don't know what the difference is. Maybe we're meant to understand that when they're speaking English, actually they're speaking Klingon, but they're speaking English just for the benefit of us, the viewers. But if that's the case, I'm reminded of how well this issue or this aspect of language is handled in terms of cinematic, how to express this in cinematic ways in order to also convey information to the audience. There's a great film which is called The Hunt for Red October. And I think that film, there are many other examples, but that is an example of how that's handled so well, as a close-up of a person speaking, I think in the Russian language, and it closes out, it zooms out and speaks in the English language. So the idea is whenever they're speaking English, they're actually speaking in Russian. And so it's like, I'd like to go to Montana. And then Sean Connery's like, Sham Neill, why are you suddenly speaking English about wanting to go to Montana? What is this about, Sham Neill? Oh, I'm sorry, Captain Sean Connery. That's so anyway. So then this is the scene on the bird of prey, armed heavily, and so they are planning the boarding party. Torg is gonna captain this. He's gonna go to and this is the great scene. And turns it, and he turns and he goes in. That's the last time he's going to see his crew alive, actually. But anyway, so the idea is they're going to beam aboard the Enterprise and take over, plant their flag there, and take Genesis from their own memory banks. While in the meantime, as we know, Kirk is planning something of his own. He has Dr. McCoy and Sulu go to the transporter room, and the rest of you come with me. We've got a job to do. And so the idea is he's gonna have the Klingons beam aboard the Enterprise while his crew are gonna beam elsewhere. But before that, what are they gonna do? They go to the ship's computer. He, Chekhov, and Scotty go to the ship's computer, and what does he do? He initiates the self-destruct sequence. And Scotty and Chekhov are like, whoa, whoa, but they go along with it because they know this is super, super serious. Destruct sequence 1, code 1, 1A. Destruct sequence 2, code 1, 1A, 2B. What's this right? Destruct sequence 3, code 3. I'm sorry. Destruct sequence 3, code 1B, 2B, 3. And destruct sequence engaged. Waiting final code for 1 minute countdown. Code 0, 0, 0. Destruct 0. Destruct sequence is activated, and they have 1 minute for the final destruct sequence of the USS Enterprise. This is so big for a number of reasons. One of which is, of course, this is something that we've seen. The self-destruct sequence bit is seen, I think, in one of the earlier episodes. What's it? Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, right? And but like they don't change the self-destruct codes, even though they've mentioned it in front of people who aren't members of the. Anyway, okay, but anyway, so the self-destruct sequence is there, and also we have to remember that this is from the motion picture. The same ship that was from the Wrath of Khan, which is the same ship that was from the motion picture, which is the same ship that was from the original series, the continuity. It was refit. It took 18 months, but it was a refitted Enterprise, but it's the same Enterprise. This is the same Enterprise from the series that is now counting down the final minute of the USS Enterprise. And they're running, and the music is, and they're running through the corridors, and then they beam down first, and you've got that wonderful one, dun, 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 and it doesn't quite do it quite yet, dun, 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 and then as they beam down, the Klingons beam aboard, and Torg, dun, 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 and he walks around. I was so fascinated by Torg in this moment, by the way, and that long overcoat and his shoulders. This is super Jack Sparrow. I mean, Jack Sparrow wasn't around for me anyway in '84, but later on, now I watch after that. Oh yeah, this is very Johnny Depp. But anyway, dun, dun, he goes, my lord, they go to the bridge. The ship appears to be that can't be. They're hiding. Yes, but the computer's it's the only thing speaking. Let me hear. And then it's like, no, and like Tori's like, oh, what's this? What's this computer speak? 10, 9, 8. And Torg's like, what is this? What? I don't understand. 8, 7. And of course, get out of the. And then one, boom. This is it. The destruction of the Enterprise sequence. Paul mentioned this too as well. This and the stealing of the Enterprise sequence. This to me. First, the saucer section collapses, and you see the inside workings, the mechanic works, and it just explodes. But it doesn't explode all at once. Like the first half of the saucer section explodes. So it's all it's got that Return of the Jedi Death Star in mid-construction type of jagged edge look to it. And it's still exploding, and it's just boom, and it's just gonna go down in a blaze of glory. And note too the angle as it's approaching the atmosphere of the Genesis planet. It's the same angle that the ship has at the opening credits of the original series. This is and it goes off in a distance in the same angle as well, and the trail, but as it falls one final time. The fall, the destruction of the Enterprise, and the James Horner music is and we see the shot of the crew now on the Genesis planet, one by one, Sulu and Chekhov, and then Bones, and then Kirk and McCoy, and they look up and hold on the three of them, Scotty, Bones, and Kirk, and Kirk's looking, my God, Bones, what have I done? And then Bones says it so beautifully, what you had to do, what you always do, turn death into a fighting chance to live. This is the Kirk philosophy in a nutshell. Wow, wow, wow. And I love too the look on James Doohan's face, Scotty. He's looking up like actually this way, like because you know that Scotty loves the Enterprise. If you know the episode called the Trouble with Tribbles, you know how much Scotty loves the Enterprise. He loves the Enterprise. So you can imagine what he's thinking in that way. Like everyone's like now focusing on the Genesis planet surface. Core readings unstable, changing rapidly. But Scotty just holds on for that extra moment longer up. The sky's looking at this Enterprise being destroyed, and then they go into the final mission here, and so they find Savick and now young Spock, who is now growing in now the Leonard Nimoy like face, and then this is the one of the guards is down and we understand probably killed, and then the other guard is shot, and then we have the reunion of Savick and the crew. But before that, we have one final moment of Kirk to David, now his dead son, puts his coat, puts it over him out of respect, and he gets the story, and he sees Spock, who is now grown but now collapsed. And what is they to do now? The planet is destroying itself. Everything's fireballs. It's getting worse, unstable. He sees the communicator there. He understands that he can communicate with Krug on the Klingon vessel there. Commander, Klingon vessel. Right. Sorry about your crew, but as you say on Earth, c'est la vie. I have what you want. I have the secret of Genesis. You're gonna have to beam us up there to get it. I'm waiting for you. What is your answer? And then, of course, Krug comes down. He chants. He's crying, but he's like, all right. Oh, drop all weapons. Over there. All but Kirk. I'm sorry. Doing the Christopher Lloyd voice makes me want to cough. Sorry. And then he has right. What does he say to all of them? Oh, you have to bring them. No. Because you wish it. Oh, Krug, he's clever. He's very clever. What a great villain he is. And he has the rest of them, except Kirk and Spock, beamed aboard. And how do you say beam aboard? He says malts. Right? John Larroquette says malts. Cho-chu. And they beam. And oh gosh, Christopher Lloyd voice. I can't do it. Oh man. All right. Let's see. A bolt of lightning. What? A bolt of lightning. All right. Sorry about this. Okay. Are we good for time? Yes, we're good for time. Okay. So now we have the final fight between Krug and Kirk on the now unstable surface of the Genesis planet. Genesis, I want it. You fool! Look around you. We're gonna die here. If we don't help each other, we're gonna die here. Perfect. Then that's the way it shall be. And the rock boom, and then fighting. And the fighting, and like he's strong. Krug's strong because as I mentioned, he grabs him by the throat. He's like, "Give me Genesis!" And then Kirk's doing that. Got that look kind of. Oh, and there's another Kirk groan there, and he tries to kick him. And this was so fascinating to me as a kid when Krug grabs Kirk in mid kick, and he flips him, and the flip of the guy over, and then just like throwing him against the rock there. Oh, this is, and if you know Star Trek, the original series, if this had that one of the sequence music pieces in that, that would have been perfect. But anyway, they're fighting, and there's and you got there's a little bit of I think groin action, I think, and that leads Krug to fall down onto a cliff below. Rather than maintain the high ground advantage, I'm thinking of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. I have the high ground, Anakin. I have the high ground. He didn't keep his high ground. Kirk did. He like flew to he flies down there on the cliff, and the final battle. Everything's like volcano, lava, everything on this little cliff thing, and he's like fighting, and then just punches, and then like the thing. Oh, look down there, says Krug, and then the half face of the cliff falls, and he falls. And that's Krug now grabbed, holding on to for dear life. And this is where Kirk's humanity comes in, because we know that Kirk wouldn't kill someone outright. And so he's been fighting for his life, true, but he wouldn't kill anyone outright. This is where he says, give me your hand. Give me your hand. Right? He said it before too. If we don't help each other, we're going to die. We've got to help each other. He said, no, no, no. Right? That's what this is Kirk. And he's got to give me your hand. Please, please give me your hand. And then what does Crew do? He doesn't take his hand. He takes his shoe. Just, and falls. And Kirk said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. And this is where he does the kick. This is the kick. I was so fascinated with this delivery of this line ever since I first saw it as a kid. And I'll try to do it just again. If I fail, please forgive me. And as Kirk's like, I have had enough of you. Boom. I love how Kirk Shatner says, I have had enough of you. It reminds me of what is it? In Shakespeare, or like in Elizabethan drama, there's this concept of rhythm of speech and dialogue or lines in plays, which is known as iambic pentameter. The idea of the stress of the syllables falling in a kind of rhythmic pattern. And so I love this. This is almost like it's not quite iambic pentameter, I grant you, but it's very similar in concept. So I have had enough of you, right? Oh, I love it. So in order to preserve that sense of kind of Star Trekian iambic pentameter, you have to be, I had you, right? So you have to stress those words. I have had enough of you. So I love it's in particular, there's a lot of words to be said in between had and you, because enough of. I have had enough of you. I love that. That's so cool. But anyway, that is the end of Crew. By the way, I've mentioned this in a kind of podcast where I was a guest talking about Star Trek 3, but just between you and me, we're in the year 2022 and February 2022. And for what is it? 2 years or so, we've been dealing with the pandemic and like infections and all this stuff. And just, it's been part of our lives for just so long. I don't know about you. I'm just sick of it. I am so sick of this. I want it to be over. I know it's complex. I know all that stuff. I just want it to be over. So always I'm thinking, this is how I feel about the pandemic. And if the pandemic were a thing, I would want to say this exact same line that Kirk says here, which is, I have had enough of you, and just kick him into the volcano lava of the Genesis planet. But anyway, so yes, that line, I have had enough of you. Yes. Okay. So what was I saying? So here we have and Bartholomew says, Daisuke has such a good memory for dialogue and characterization. He could do a one-man stage. Well, that is one of the nicest things, Bartholomew. Wow, wow. Wow, you are so kind. Thank you. Lane Hedges also says your dramatization. Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. Wow. Anyway, so and then we have the moment of the sun coming up. The sun shines while the volcano and everything's like burning up. Okay, it's like, oh, look at that beautiful sun. But anyway, and then we go to the body of Spock, and he sees the face of his friend Leonard Nimoy, and he grabs him. Oh, my friend! And what is he gonna do? Everything's falling around him. Everything is about to be over. It's a no-win scenario, but here again, the Kobayashi Maru instinct kicks into high gear. What does he do? The only thing he do, he's got the Klingon communicator. His memory, his ability to recall. Kirk is a genius in this way. He can remember details, facts of history, lines, and he just heard this moment of Krug earlier speaking to the communicator. Maltz, Choi-chu, and so here he's doing it again. Just this is the only thing he can say. Maltz, Choi-chu. What can he do? And then yes, it does it. he beams aboard, that orange beam, just as the ground below them falls. Incidentally, too, I love the detail where he picks up Spock and they're both standing, and you see the shot of their feet on the ground as everything around them is falling apart to the lava. Spock's feet is barefoot, and I'm reminded of there's a barefoot uh, situation in a film called Die Hard, and it's like shoot the glass. I'm like, I don't want to be Spock if you have Alan Rickman in Star Trek 3 saying shoot the glass. I want to walk right away from that. But anyway, go to the ship. Maltz is there, like, oh, taking over the ship. Now we have the crew trying to deal with this new technology to them anyway, which is the bridge of the bird of prey. They go away. Go, Sulu! And it's where's the matter antimatter reducer? This? No, this, that, or nothing. I read this right. We have go Sulu, and then the part of the surface explodes. Not the planet, but the whole surface. We probably assume that later, off screen, the planet explodes. But anyway, this is his goodbyes. Kirk's goodbye to David, and he says to Maltz before he says, "I do not deserve to live." And Kirk's, fine, I'll kill you later. And then take this to the bridge. Wait, you said you would kill me. I lied. I'd love to see Malta's reaction after. I don't think we see Malta's reaction, John Larroquette's reaction after that. Is he happy or is he sad that Kirk spared his life? I don't know. But anyway, that's another. If he's happy, then maybe he could defect, go to work for the Federation, but I don't know, clandestinely. I don't know, and maybe be part of the crew for the USS Grissom. Now they're on their way to Vulcan for the final sequence. Now they have Spock and McCoy, and that wonderful sequence I touched upon, that tender moment between McCoy and the seemingly unconscious Spock. He says, "I think I missed you." And that acknowledgement of their friendship is just beautiful as they're on the way for the final sequence to Vulcan. They land. I love the bit where they, tell them, Sarek says, tell Kirk, we'll be ready. And the final approach, Sulu says, "You're on manuals. It's been a while, but here goes." Dun, dun, and then the Spock theme from James Horner. And I love the detail, too, as the bird of prey lands, the way that the spotlights on the landing pad hit the wings. And oh, that's so cool. That was such a cool detail. And the close-up on Sarek's face as it lands. And then and then they come down with the body of Spock, and then Uhura's there to meet them. And then they see the steps, those long steps. My goodness. If I were Kirk, I was like, oh, I've come all this way. I have to climb all these steps too. Oh, but anyway, for my friend, we go up there to the steps to the final sequence on top of this temple in Mount Solea. And we have Dame Judith Anderson. And she's saying, the request is for Fal Tor Pan, the refusion. And what she's saying is, this is not logical. And even if it could be done, even if we can acknowledge that it's been in the past, it's only been done in legend. What you're asking for is illogical. And this is where Sarek says, my logic is uncertain where my son is concerned. And the moment where Bones accepts the danger. And then we have the final refusion, Fal Tor Pan, which goes over this great music, the rush of me, and everyone's closing their eyes. Not everyone, but the Vulcans are closing their eyes, and like Scotty's looking over at Saavik, like, and Saavik's like, only time. And then, did it work or not? We see someone standing up. It could be Spock. We're not sure. He's robed. He's hooded. Did it work or not? Sarek says, only time will tell. And this is the moment where Sarek says, Kirk, I thank you. What you done is, and then Kirk says, what I done, I had to do. And at what cost? Your ship, your son. And then Kirk says the line, which is so Kirk. He says, if I hadn't tried, the cost would have been my soul. That is such a Kirk line. What a great line that is. And then here we have the Spock, again, just oblivious, seemingly, just walking past him. And then he stops. The music cuts out, turns, takes off his hood. And it's Leonard Nimoy as Spock. He's back. The search for Spock. He's found Spock, kind of, not quite. We have a few more minutes to go. And here we have it. His hair is disheveled. It's not quite Kolinahr level hair growth. It's, let's call it Genesis level, Genesis-y. It's not culinary level. It's Genesis-y. I'm sure he wants to go to a barber after this, but he acknowledges, he goes through, passes each of the crew members. We mentioned that little moment between him and Savick and the others. And then we go to Kirk and Spock. And then he says, my father says, you have been my friend. You came out for me. He said, why would you do this? And they mentioned, because the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many. And he has this memory, I have been and ever shall be your friend. He says the word ever instead of always. There's a little bit of a discontinuity because the Katra was transferred to Bones before the final moments between Kirk and Spock on the Enterprise and Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. But that's okay. That's okay because maybe we can assume that the Katra is some still connection between Spock and his dying moments and the Katra that was transferred to Bones even prior to that. Okay, I can accept that. So that's why maybe he's recalling moments that happened to Spock after the Katra transfer. And despite that, okay, the ship out of danger. You saved the ship. You saved the ship. You saved us all. Don't you remember? And this is the final appeal of Kirk. And Spock's like struggling. And this is the moment here. This is the moment. He turns and he says, Jim, your name is Jim. And then Kirk smiles and he says, yes. And this is so cool. And this is where the original Star Trek theme kicks in. Dun, da, 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 and it cuts to Bones. And I must say that throughout the films, we do hear the Star Trek theme, the original Star Trek theme, dun, da, 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 da. And when it's used, it's a special moment. It can't be used all the time, but it's used in special moments. This is, for me, perhaps the best use of the original Star Trek theme in any film. The da-da-da-dum, when it cuts to Bones and he does this thing, like, that is like the coolest, like, that's the coolest moment. And it's just, everyone is so happy and everyone is, and the music is, and it got da 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 da, and it has that moment, and we have that great moment where the crew come, Sulu's there, and Sulu's touching Spock's chest for a very, very long time, but he's just like touching, but anyway, so touching that, and everyone, we don't hear the dialogue, but we hear the music, and he turns to Kirk, and Kirk's just there smiling. And then Spock does the little eyebrow thing, and you see Kirk kind of laugh a little bit. Oh, his friend's back, and it's just da, 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 and then the adventure continues. What I love about this is Kirk doesn't embrace his friend. Kirk is just standing there after all this stuff is happening, and everyone's surrounding Spock. Kirk's just, yeah, just smiling. It's just, I don't know. It's like he's so happy he can't even move. He's just standing, and it cuts to a long shot, and Spock is just looking at Kirk, and Kirk is looking at Spock. They're not even hugging, just looking at each other, but it's just, and everyone's hugging Spock, kind of, except Kirk. I love that so much. I love that so much. That is like, it gets me every time. And then, of course, the adventure continues. And then, as I mentioned, as a joke in passing, Mr. Adventure, hey, I'm still here. I want some adventure. Could you imagine Mr. Adventure coming up in this great moment, with ruining the moment, and then the adventure could, dun, 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 and that's it. Star Trek 3 in a nutshell. That's it for me. So, yeah, I love this film so much. Yeah. Oh, it's so great. It's so great. Yeah, it's so great. All right, I always do this. I get overwhelmed. I get carried away. I have to go, and I have to go in 4 minutes because I have to run an errand, a family errand. So I'm really sorry about this. I have taken up the conversation so much. I apologize, but just want that moment. That's such a great moment. Anyway, all right, let me go to the chat here. All right. Yeah, the scene at the end of the Enterprise crew is touching, as Cooper Glover says. Yes. Mark, hello, Mark. You say, I'm tearing up listening to a synopsis of the movie I previously thought was one of the most forgettable in the series. Oh, wow, that's great. Thank you. Yes. Only time will tell. Thank you, Scott. Yes, thank you. That's a very important quote. Yes. Oh, gosh. This is... Oh, great detail, Scott. You say after Next Generation show, Kirk made that Klingon's life miserable, as we learned a Klingon would rather die than be taken a prisoner. Yes, thank you very much. in reference to my comment about malts. Yes, thank you. All right. So we have that. Yes, thank you so much for this. Christian's Hobby Blog says Deep Space Nine seems more my jam, but I don't want to be too confused when cameos show up. That's okay. I love me some Deep Space Nine too. Great stuff. 4 minutes, yes. Nax 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I wonder if Mr. Adventure or Maltz appear in 4. That would be cool. Yes. Anyway. All right, my friends. I've got to go in about a minute and a half here. Sorry about this. Oh gosh, I wish I had more time. Anyway, this was so much fun. Thank you, thank you. Just to be able to talk again. I wish I could go on. I'm so sorry. But you are so great. You are so great. You have all these deeds. You know much better than me, and so just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Um, uh, Much success to you, or as they say in Klingon, much success or much kupla to you all. Yes, thank you. Um, so much fun. Oh, Jerome Weaselberry as well. Thank you so much. Mark, Cooper Glover, Zyrother, Scott, Bartholomew, Nax, W. Forge, Christian, Analysis of Sci-Fi, Irwin. Gosh, I'm sorry, William, Lane, Scott C. I'm sorry if I missed your name. So sorry. Um, it's like Cuba Gooding Jr. In an Oscar speech. You know, I got everyone. I love all of you. I love everyone. I love everyone. Oh, I love everyone. All right, so okay, and so yeah. All right. Yes, next week, as Scott says. Yes, there be whales here. Yes, yes. We will be talking about that next week. So thank you very much. So much. So much. Paul, thank you. Those two sequences. Yes, I agree. Thank you so much for that, my dear friend. Our dear friends, thank you. And as again, um, right, Kopla, Marty, Kopla. Yeah. So sorry, so sorry. Yes. All right. I'm the captain of the USS Grissom. Yeah, you've got to do it. You can only do it if I say it's okay. Yes. All right. Thank you so much, my dear friends. All right. See you at the next one. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Kupla! Kupla!